Sound check 1 2 3. Sound check 1 2 3.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting for today, July 6, 2026. We have quorum present for today's meeting, and I'd like to call the committee officially to order. A reminder that all electronic devices will be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. We have quorum present in chambers today. We have Councillor Francis, Councillor Taddison, Councillor Beattie, Councillor Cooper, Councillor M. Wilson, Councillor McMeekin, Councillor Crutch, Councillor Spadafora, and who's going to change his chair and leave it for me. For the next meeting. Thank you, Councillor Spadafora, and also Councillor Kassar, Vice Chair. Joining us virtually, we also have Councillor Jackson and Councillor Alex Wilson. Also in chambers is Councillor Huang. Okay, on to our agenda. No ceremonial activity, approval of the agenda. If I could get a mover and seconder to approve today's agenda as presented. Thank you, Councillor Spadafora, seconded by Councillor Beattie. Thank you both. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, it's a show of hand vote. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. On to declarations of interest. Any to declare? Seeing none, we'll move on to adoption of the minutes of our previous meeting, which is on June 15th. Could I get a mover and seconder to do that? Thank you, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Kassar. Any discussion on our minutes? Seeing none, that's also a show of hand vote. Those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Over to our next agenda item, which is delegations. A reminder before our delegations begin, members are reminded that questions of the delegations are for clarification purposes only and not for debate of our delegates. Delegates, you are reminded that you have 5 minutes in total to speak today. At the 4-minute mark, you'll hear a little tone sound. That's to give you a little courtesy notice that you have a minute left to wrap up your presentation. But please don't leave the podium once you get there. Committee members might have questions for you, and I'll let you know, and we'll go through the discussion that way. So first up at 6.1, we have delegations respecting report PW 26078, which is tactile walking surface indicators at curb ramps and depressed sidewalks citywide, item 9.3 for today's meeting. And first up, we have James Kemp. And for our delegates who are joining us at the podium for delegation, there is a button that you can use to either lower or higher the podium based on what your needs are. And please feel free to use that to make sure that the podium works best for you. Okay, James, when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Are we ready? All good? Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Councillor Nan and members of the Public Works Committee. Thank you for taking the time to hear from me today. I'm here to speak to something that's very passionate at the moment, button plates, truncated domes, or tactile warning indicators, I believe they're also called, versus what we're using today in urban braille, which is textured paving pads. Switch. Oh, there we go. No, I got it. So just to give you a standard button plate example, many cities have this. It's a cast iron button plate. Everybody should be familiar with it. This is one of the most common. I believe engineering did originally pitch this to us as their preferred option. However, in experience, we found that this particular model is probably the worst one we've come across. Just the design of it, I'm not entirely sure exactly why. However, I know that engineering has been working very hard to put forth examples of newer models for us to test. I do believe that we need to actually test them in an actual experience. So I believe that they're going to test on intersections on Barton Street, Gage and Lottridge, for us to test sometime, hopefully later July, so that we can truly give our feedback on the newest plates and how they operate with a variety of different disabilities and mobility devices. Just collecting some other examples of button plates that I've seen around the city. You know, we've got some Center Mall, we've got Go Station, we have a liquor store, which actually I really like this, where they've got the small little plates that you can actually drive around with your wheels, and there's bollards there in case you destabilize. That's a good design idea, as well as Go Station again. Just trying to give people a good example. So this is the iteration that we use currently. This is a textured paving pad. We've tried several patterns. We've tried cross-hatching, diagonal cross-hatching. We've tried little squares, and we have these line patterns that we've been using in the Urban Braille format. These are helpful for everybody. These are tactilely and tonally recognized by people with vision issues, vision loss, and blind, but it also allows people with mobility devices of all various kinds to access the sidewalk and the road without destabilizing of any kind, without pain from the vibrations or whatnot from the domes. People with prosthetics, they're not catching their feet on the raised surfaces. Cane and crutch users can be assured that when they put their pad down, they know it's going to land on a flat surface. And it also is better for other wheeled devices listed. I'm not going to go and read through this all because there's just not enough time, but I did give some breakdown of the different disabilities and some of the concerns that people have when using button plates or truncated domes. So I ask you to review that if you have leisure. Thank you. One of the things that was raised about the textured paving pads is their condition, that they're wearing down, that they're flaking off, that they're scraping off. And it's true. I've done some extensive research going around the city and testing out different pads, taking photos. In the last few years, we've noticed a significant quality issue in installation, either in installation or in the materials that we're using. It's flaking off very quickly. It's just not holding up. I have a picture here of two pads that were scraped and one triangle that is in perfect condition, which is a good example that when it's installed correctly, this stuff actually sticks well. This is an example of Mississauga, just trying to show what other cities are doing and give some explanation on Urban Braille. There's some stuff in here about how we took the idea from Japan, I believe, initially, but our colleagues here will have more information on the history if you would like it. Just a concern, I've traveled to Mississauga a few times, and I have difficulty using these button plates every time. That's why I bring it up. These are good examples of Urban Braille 2011. These are 15-year-old Urban Braille pattern. You can tell that the contrasting surface is still contrasting when it's wet. It's still doing its job. It's holding up well. It's just an example that we used to do this quite well, and something's happened recently that we need to address. Just quickly running through here, this is a good example of this. King and Houston, this Urban Braille patterning was installed June 2024. This picture was taken June 2024, and this picture was taken June 2026. You can see it is severely degraded. It's only 2 years old. This one I just found the other day. It's a new textured paving pad that was installed really quick. It's not deep enough that it's not tactilely recognized. Again, inconsistent Urban Braille design. They're actually different sizes and different depths and different materials, so we need to address that. And then I just put out a couple of other issues of notes. I didn't even have 5 minutes to cover it all, so that's it. I'm done.
Thanks for wrapping that up really succinctly. I'll turn it over to my committee members if there is any questions for clarification. Okay, first up we have Councillor Tattison.
Oh, that was done.
Hey, thanks for your delegation. Just a question about the button plates. I noticed that you had some pictures where there was actually a diamond-shaped pattern, but I think the new button plates, aren't they more parallel so that wheelchairs can go through them a little bit easier?
No, the diamond plates are directional indicators, so they're tactilely recognized. Are we talking about the diamonds that are in the middle of the sidewalk?
I'm just talking about there are some plates some button plates that you have, and the pattern is almost like a diamond shape.
Oh, you mean, okay, I see what you're saying. So one is staggered and one is in parallel. Yeah, yeah, there are different versions of it. The jury's still out on which one is best. I know that the one that the city would like us to test is parallel with some spacing in between.
Okay, and then just for clarity, you're supportive of Urban Braille, which is in the cement,
Very supportive of Urban Braille.
and semi-supportive of button plates in support of Urban Braille?
I am not in support of button plates. However, I recognize that we might have to find some sort of middle ground.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification.
Thank you. No further questions
Thank you.
from committee members. Thank you again, Delegate Kemp. Next up, we have Tim Nolan. Okay, Delegate Nolan, your mic is activated when you are ready. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and speak to you. It's been quite some time since I've been here to address some accessibility issue. I'm here to talk about the button plates versus Urban Braille. A little bit of history, if I may, about Urban Braille. They were developed back in the early 1990s to the mid-1990s. It took about 5 years. I was part of the group. They were introduced because the city and surrounding municipalities were installing curb cuts at various street corners. And in so doing, we ran into a problem across the city because people with low vision, vision loss, people who are blind, were finding themselves in the middle of intersections, not realizing they had actually left the sidewalk and were now in the middle of a roadway. And that was particularly problematic for people who are blind who use dog guides, because dogs rely upon a curb in order to know where and when to stop when traveling across the roadway. That said, the Urban Braille design took about 5 years, and I was a major part of that development and those design guidelines. Fast forward to today. Let me back up, sorry. At the time that the Urban Braille design guidelines were developed, there were no other products or standards, no guidelines in the marketplace anywhere, as far as we could tell, anywhere around the world. They just didn't exist. Hamilton would have been one of the very first communities, certainly in Canada, to create some kind of tactile information system for people who are blind or visually impaired on sidewalks. So, but at the same time, and little did we know then, that truncated domes were being designed and developed in the United States because of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It was in response to the needs of the blind community at that time. We didn't know that here, and if we had, we probably would have incorporated the button plates or the tactile walking surface indicators, as they're called, into our design. I'm sure of it. But that said, we proceeded. But since then, there's been lots of changes in technology, lots of interface systems, digital interface systems to help guide people wherever they travel. So nowadays, as a result of the Americans with Disabilities Act and the use of button plates around the world, and they are used in many, many countries around the world, the use of button plates is now part of an ISO standard. It happens to exist in the CSA standards. Tactile walking surfaces are part of the CNIB's Clearing Your Pathway guidelines. Tactile walking surfaces are part of the it's just escaped me. But anyway, they are part of standards right across this country. That said, there's a debate going on now between the Advisory Committee for Persons with Disabilities and staff. I think, around whether it's one or the other. This is not a black and white issue. It's not an either or matter. It's been 30 years since the Urban Braille Design Guidelines have been reconsidered. I'm here to recommend to you that staff should be directed to work with people in the community, people with disabilities, researchers, people with lived experience, people from disability-related organizations, to come together and reconfigure the Urban Braille Design Guidelines to meet the best needs of this community going forward. That may or may not include button plates, and it may or may not include Urban Braille, who knows? But I think it's time that we come back together and review those guidelines, and that would be the most prudent way for this council and this committee and city council to proceed.
Thank you for that, Delegate Nolan. Are you complete for your delegation?
Yes, I think so.
Thank you so much. We do have questions. First up is Councillor Huang.
Thanks, Tim, for your delegation today. I wonder if you can just give us a little more history. So 30 years ago, you were part of that small group that did that work. So I wonder if you can just give us a touch more information on what that group was and how they did that work.
So I was a member of the Regional Advisory Committee for People with Disabilities in those days. In those days, we called ourselves the FISDIS Committee. And I'm sure Councillors Jackson and McMeekin, I don't know if Councillor McMeekin is here, but I'm sure they would remember fondly. That was a group that was chaired by Councillor Geraldine Copps at the time. And staff were coming to the committee and reporting about this great new idea, and, you know, sort of the talk of the day was we have to put these curb cuts at all city sidewalks. And so a great deal of that work had been undertaken. But as I said earlier, you know, we realized that that was creating a problem for people with vision loss. And so what we did is we recommended that we convene a working group, a committee. I don't know what we would have called ourselves in those days, but we brought together staff, and it was a senior staff person from, I don't know if it was called Public Works or Engineering or whatever department back in the day. Her name was Hoda Kayal, and she was an architect and an engineer, an extremely knowledgeable and very thoughtful individual. And that group comprised of a number of staff. There was also another person by the name of Vladimir Matus. Vladimir was on it, and another person, Tony Bordenero, who was an engineer who was, by the way, losing his eyesight at that very time. So we had some very, very good staff work with members of the FISDIS committee, along with people from the community, including the CNIB and other organizations representing people with disabilities. And we developed what you now see in the BIA areas, the Urban Braille Design. And it's important for us to remember that when we're talking about the use of truncated domes, we're talking about street corners. But Urban Braille and access for people with disabilities goes far beyond the street corner. I mean, before you get to the street corner, you've got to get to the street. And what are we doing? What are we, you know, how are we actually engaging people with disabilities to give them clear, unobstructed access to get to where they have to go? And for many people with disabilities, if not most, ambulatory transit is their primary source of getting around the city. And so they rely upon clearly defined, accessible sidewalks. And as I say, I'm not here to ask you to arbitrate, you know, whether it be truncated domes or solely Urban Braille. That would be an unfair expectation to put upon you. But what you can do is you can direct staff to work with the community again to sort of reinvent the old working group or committee of the FISDIS to re-envision redesign the urban braille pathways and sidewalks that may or may not include the use of truncated domes. And technology has come an awfully long way in 35 years. There's all kinds of materials and opportunities out there that could be considered and engaged in this process.
Thank you, Tim. And Councillor Jackson, who is on the big screen behind you, was nodding, and there was a couple of thumbs up in there. So I think he recalled very vividly about this disability, this FizDiz group.
FizDiz committee.
FizDiz.
It was short for physical disabilities.
Okay.
And I must say, at that time, the committee was called FizDiz because there was no consideration given to people with other disabilities. Physical disabilities was the primary consideration back in those days.
Well, thank you. So I just want to clarify exactly your ask, which was to redirect staff to work with people in the community, lived experiences, researchers, organizations that support, to essentially review the urban braille guidelines and to come back with potentially like a new and improved kind of guidelines. Did I get that right?
You got it perfect.
Okay, so I think that that's something, Chair, I would like to have that discussion at the time when the report comes forward, but perhaps I will clarify my amendment or ask for council next week, because I don't think that I have enough time to write something clearly, but I would like to have the opportunity to discuss this at the time when this report comes forward.
Thank you. And we do have another councillor who would like to ask some questions to clarify. Councillor Taddison.
Hi, Tim. It's Councillor Taddison to your right. Tim, you said you'd recommend staff working with and engaging with people with disabilities to rewrite the guidelines. I understand what Councillor Wing just said, but in your opinion, isn't that what staff is already doing and has done? Like, what's the difference of what you're saying and what staff did, or what staff has done? What would your recommendation be to do differently?
Not for me to tell you what staff is or is not doing. I don't really know. Staff have come and consulted with the ACPD on this matter. They've received an opinion from ACPD. There were two dissenting opinions on that, by the way. That of myself and my wife, Kim, who is also a member of the ACPD committee. We thought that that the opinion of the ACPD was basically putting this committee and council in the middle of a dispute over what should be done. I've recommended from day one that we need to go back to the drawing board. The Urban Braille Design Guidelines were, and Councillor Jackson would probably remember this better than I, but I think they were brought to the regional council circa 1996, and then they were approved by all of the area municipalities sometime shortly thereafter. That means those Urban Braille Design Guidelines have not been reviewed in any way, shape, or form in 30 years. They've never come back to the advisory committee, and I've been a member of the current advisory committee since 2002. We've never reviewed them, despite, by the way, many requests to do so. Secondly, I do believe the Urban Braille Design Guidelines are part of the city's barrier-free design guidelines, which were introduced in circa 2005, and those barrier-free design guidelines have never been updated since, despite the fact that they were supposed to be updated every 5 years. So the barrier-free design guidelines have not been reviewed by staff unless Brian Hollingworth or other staff can indicate otherwise. But they've not been reviewed, and certainly not by any community group that involves people with disabilities, people with lived experience, people from disability-related organizations, researchers, and so on. And I might add, I'm a bit confused, if you don't mind my saying so. We're told that the use of truncated domes are a tripping hazard, they're slippery, they're difficult to navigate for people with all kinds of disabilities. If that in fact is true, then I say there's no better place to put a set of truncated domes than at the top of the stairs on this second floor. If you're going to put a tripping hazard anyway, any place, you might as well put it at the top of the set of the stairs. Wouldn't you agree? Great place to put a tripping hazard, right? So if truncated domes are really that problematic, we would never put them at the top of a set of stairs. And here they are right here on the second floor of City Hall. So, you know, if you agree that truncated domes could not and should not be used in this city, then I suggest you probably have to remove the risk liability that sits at the top of the stairs here on the second floor. So anyway, I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, I think you've clarified what I needed to hear. Just in terms of other cities, Tim, I know you have a broad understanding of what's happening in Ontario. What are other cities doing with this right now in terms of this debate?
I can't say specifically because I've not personally done the research, but what I understand from people who have done some inquiry on my behalf, London, Mississauga, Ottawa, Toronto. London is using red dome plates. Most other cities are using yellow because of the need for visibility. These dome plates are being used, as I said earlier, they're an ISO standard. It's the International Organization of Standardization. They're used all over the world. They're used in New Zealand. They're used in Australia, Japan, China, England, France, Germany, United States. You name it, they're being used. And they're being used as a tactile indication for what is supposed to be a change in elevation. But at least that's according to the CSA standard. But they're being used as a wayfinding tool as well, indoors and outdoors. So, and as a person with vision loss, I can tell you, and I hate to say this, I hope you don't mind me saying this, as the person who conceived the idea of Urban Braille, it was right here standing in front of you, it was my recommendation that brought Urban Braille to what we have today. And it saddens me to say this, but they're not as good as the truncated dome plates. As a person with vision loss. That's why I'm recommending to you that you direct staff to work with people in the community to re-envision what Urban Braille really looks like, because that doesn't mean there isn't room for Urban Braille to continue, but maybe it needs to be thought about slightly differently. But Urban Braille is not as good as the tactile walking surface indicators or dome plates, and that comes from somebody who has vision loss.
Okay, thanks, Tim. No more questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, we have Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you for your delegation. I think I just need a little bit of clarity, please. My understanding is that the staff report is recommending that we move to a provincially uniform system, because we know that persons living with disabilities are working, they have the right to travel, to cross boundaries, and so the expectation is when they do so, they're not going to be having to navigate design matters that are unique to each and every town or city. Can you help me rectify? I guess I'm missing something. Thank you.
Yeah, so, and this is the big, Urban Braille exists only in Hamilton, as far as I know. Nobody else has adopted the Urban Braille standard. I know that after Urban Braille came out, the City of London took our design guidelines and they enhanced it, but I guess they've changed over time. So Hamilton is the only city that is using Urban Braille. I can tell you that as somebody who has consulted blind people right across this country, and these are people who are also part of advisory committees like our own Hamilton ACPD. All of the blind people that I have spoken with, and I've asked them about this because I wanted to hear from them, they've said they're not in favor of the Urban Braille design. They go with the truncated domes, plates, and most importantly, and perhaps Councillor Wilson, this is really getting at the heart of your question, what they've said is, they have a great deal of difficulty when they travel, when there are different design guidelines used in different places. And that's not only in relation to the use of truncated domes, but that is also in relation to audible pedestrian signals. They're looking for a common approach so that when they travel, they know what to expect no matter where they're traveling. And as I said earlier, truncated dome plates are being used around the world. This is not unique to Hamilton. It's not unique to Canada. And I think, you know, that comment in the staff report is not just about the use of tactile dome plates in the urban areas like the downtown core. Regrettably, our own city guidelines only use urban braille in BIA areas. We're not using urban braille or tactile dome plates anywhere outside of BIAs, which is a mistake fundamentally. But I do believe they're talking about in that clause in the report, that's talking about now starting to use truncated dome plates in urban, in rural neighborhoods, areas outside of the BIAs. And I do believe, I can't speak for the staff, but I do believe that's what their intent is. So, you know, expanding the use of wayfinding tools like truncated dome plates in areas where they don't currently exist, like walking down your street in your neighborhood. Yeah, I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you. I think the councillor has indicated you have.
Okay.
No further questions at this time. Thank you, Delegate Nolan. Next up, we have Samir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Samir Shidak. Is it Chidiak or Shidiak? If you could please correct me. Sorry? Shidiak, thank you.
Am I on? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Chair and Delegate. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is, again, Samir Chidiak. I'm from McMaster University. I've been involved with accessibility standard for the past 8 to 9 years, and Mr. Tim Nolan asked me if I can come in and speak a little bit on behalf of the truncated dome. This is not a new topic, but just to talk about the issues that always arise when we talk about accessibility is that there's not one solution that fits all, and this is what we're hearing here. So the question is that what is the balance that works for Hamilton, but still meet consistency, what's raised in the sense of it doesn't matter where I am in Canada, and also meets the current standards. So CSA has adopted the ICO standards, which is adopted by ADA and so forth. So all of them are using the truncated dome. Now, to answer some of the question about the truncated dome, when it was first introduced was in the early 1990s by ADA said that to use it, and it was a version of what we see now. But in 1994, it was suspended for a good period of time because there was complaint about it, where quite a bit of studies by various Department of Transportation in the U.S. have done investigation and technical studies to determine what is the best design. And so they kind of reviewed, and at the end, they reapplied it, made it mandated back, I believe, in 2001, if I'm not mistaken. And that since then has been the standard as far as tactile surfaces. And these are used as warning primarily for that there's a hazard coming in, whether it is a ramp, whether it's a stairs, and so forth. Now, the actual design, if you look at it, it has evolved. It's not at one time, it used to be a sphere, then it was a truncated sphere, so there's an evolution to the design, and that means that what works for Hamilton has to certainly be studied and investigated to meet various needs, whether it is for people with physical disability and for vision disability. So the question that in this particular case that I'm saying is that when we're coming up to making a decision, there's already an existing design, a guideline that has been used. And what I could not see is any complaints, at least from the limited research that I've done before this meeting, is I haven't been able to collect any data to tell me what is wrong with the current guideline. I understand that the need to be compliant with the standard is also critical at the same time. So if we can find out what is good about the current design, and can we make part of it work with the new requirement in the sense of the truncated dome, and that's, I think, what has been Mr. Nolan's been talking about. I think that may work best for the city before jumping in and saying we're going to go A or B. So this is one thing that I'm here to voice my opinion, is that I think it may be worthwhile to step back for a short period of time and not to investigate the truncated domes. I think there's a lot of studies done on truncated domes, but trying to look at a hybrid system. Could a hybrid system exist where you could meet, because the truncated dome, as Mr. Nolan said, does not address all the needs. It only addresses the ramps. So there's other needs that exist that Hamilton has done well in the past, but not other cities. So this is something that I'm advocating on their behalf, and trying to kind of put my support towards a step back for a little bit prior to committing to a one guideline, that, because this is not a 1 year decision. This is going to go on, and there's an economic cost associated with whatever decision. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We do have some questions. First up is Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you. So just to clarify, you acknowledge that there is value in having a uniform standard so that individuals living with any kind of disability can navigate, in this case, the province of Ontario, as is their right, and they don't have to be surprised by the uniqueness of design that community X, Y, and Z chooses. But yes.
Yes,
okay,
exactly. I think consistency is very important, because, and I think Mr. Nolan did mention that, because it doesn't matter where you are, the expectation should be the same. Now, having said, what I added to it is a hybrid system does not take that away. So you still have to provide consistency and uniformity, as you alluded to, but at the same time, there could be other support system that could work in conjunction with the Braille. I'm just putting that out there. I don't have the answer to it. I'm just saying is that if they step back and look at it, instead of removing everything and replacing, if that is the intent, is to see how you can do a transition zone where you can go from one to the other by making use of what you have as you progress from one design to the other.
Okay. So
consistency is important.
A is consistency and uniformity of standard. B is to provide some additional design element which would be unique to Hamilton in and around the spaces where there's uniformity?
Well, I mean, it's unique because already Hamilton is unique in the design of the urban Braille. So you already have that system which is unique to Hamilton. So one could say, and this is one of the things that talking to various members is that maybe the urban Braille should be brought up to the CSA and to be also looked at for compliance to see if that does comply with the current standard. Because when it started in 1995, at the time, CSA said you need to have textured and color contrast.
Yes.
And based on that, that's where the design came from. So it met the CSA standard of the time. However, the CSA standard evolved and our guideline did not evolve. Now, the question is, does it still meet the standard or not? And that's a big question right now because it's not mentioned directly that texture surfaces. It does give the domes and so forth. So that's one that has to be addressed because there's other issues associated with not just compliance, but the fact does it meet the need of people to, and that's the reason where the standard is. But to answer your second part of the question, and that's a complicated question, but I'm going to give a simple answer, is that you already have a system in place. Mm-hmm. Now, my question, as you transition from system A to system B to create that uniformity, should you go from 0 to 100 or should you create a transition? Because right now you don't have uniformity. Right now, actually, in some cities, in some streets, I see truncated domes, I see the urban Braille, I see everything. There's one corner where I think Dr. Rida mentioned, which is I work with her, and she mentioned that they have 4 systems in one intersection. So that is kind of addresses the meat of this conversation in the sense you need to know what to expect. And if you are transitioning from point A to point B, how can you do it in such a way that it is still meeting the need of those people without creating the confusion that we're talking about?
Thank you.
Make sense?
Thank you. And there's no further questions, so thank you so much for your delegation.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes our delegations for this topic. So we'll move forward to topic 6.2, which is delegations respecting report PW 25046A, recycling services for non-eligible properties after December 1st, 2026 citywide. First up, we have Tracy McKinnon, Westdale Village BIA, Stony Creek BIA, and Lock Street BIA. And she's joining us virtually. Oh, hello? Hi, Tracy. We can see
Hi there, can you hear me?
now. We can hear you.
Now you can hear me. Sorry, I moved my microphone. Sorry, I'm just trying to, I'm going to go somewhere quieter. Sorry. Thank you very much. I'll just be really short and sweet. Thank you. We appreciate this report being brought back to the committee. I guess that's the first step. And really our message is simple. So I represent 3 BIs in all areas of the city, East End, Stony Creek, West End, Lock Street, and Westdale Village. But no matter what end of town you are in, or if you're a small, medium, bigger business, it's the same issue. People are just concerned that how could something like recycling not be an initiative that our city would push for, especially when there is a new climate change action department or office within the city. And certainly it's not a specific initiative of that office, but in general, the circular economy and encouraging people to reduce, reuse, and recycle should be a prominent thing for our city and this council. And we hope that this service continues for small businesses. But I saw a couple letters in from daycares and so on that need the service, and it is not continued. I fear the reality is of that human nature will do that. Most items will go into the garbage, hopefully not into some of our rivers and natural areas. So it's just going to create more cost and more impact on the environment. And we just request that this service continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. I heard some of your words consistently. Your audio was dropping a little bit. And so perhaps when you're responding to questions that are going to come forward from my council colleagues, or committee colleagues, if you could just speak a little slower so we can see if you speaking slower allows us to hear you more clearly. First up, we have Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, and thank you for the preface of that, because I was going to ask for a little clarification. Tracy, good to see you. Thank you for being here today. I think I heard you say that perhaps there would be propensity amongst your some of your members to simply abandon our recycling program altogether. I'm just giving the gist of it. I think that it might have been part of your delegation. I'm wondering if you could just either drill down on that or confirm or go back through your notes and discuss that possibility through your chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Beattie. Can you hear me now clearly?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I see you nodding. Thank you. Yes, what the reality is, if there is not the recycling pickup with the businesses, the reality is each business now, each property is given 6 bags in general at each property. We've got a lot of them down to maybe 1 bag, and lots of recycling, lots of cardboard, lots of cans. And the reality is a lot of it probably will go to the garbage. That's human nature. Businesses cannot afford extra costs. The most cost effective is certainly the municipality continuing the service that they have been offering, and that taxpayers have been paying for. And so clearly it will, the reality is it will just be diverted into garbage for sure.
Okay. The audio did get a little choppy again, but I think if I could just get a summary, like a yes or no, your kind of part of your delegation here is your belief that many BIA members of the areas that you serve will simply start putting recyclables into the garbage. Basically, that's a yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy. That's all. That's all I have.
Thank you, and that concludes questions for you, Delegate McKinnon. So thank you so much for coming to delegate today on this matter. Next up, we have Nadine Ubel from Barton Village BIA.
Thank you. Chair and members of the Public Works Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Nadine Ubel. I'm the Executive Director of Barton Village BIA, as well as the Chair of the BIA Subcommittee. So I'm speaking to you today from these roles and on behalf of the businesses that we represent all over the city. I'm here today because report PW 25046A lays out very clearly what's at stake and what the feasible options are, and I'm asking this committee to help turn those options into action. First, it confirms that the city currently provides recycling collection to approximately 2,731 non-eligible properties, including 2,528 private non-eligible sources, 193 city facilities, and 10 large events. Second, the report explains that costs increased significantly on January 1st of this year because the Ontario Blue Box regulation requires recycling from eligible and non-eligible sources to be collected in separate collection vehicles. Third, it confirms that Council approved maintaining service through December of this year at a cost of approximately $2.8 million, which works out to less than $100 per property per month. And the report confirms that without further action, the service will be discontinued after December 31st of this year. For businesses, especially those in older buildings and multi-tenant properties, this isn't a simple switch. It's new contracts, new costs, limited storage space, and unclear responsibility between landlords and tenants. And when recycling becomes too complicated or too expensive, to Tracy's point, businesses will find workarounds, and those workarounds are rarely aligned with the environmental outcomes this provincial change was intended to achieve. It means more recyclables ending up in the garbage stream, more contamination, and more overflow and dumping pressures. Just as an example, in a Barton Village-style Main Street building, a small cafe in a mixed-use multi-tenant property might generate about 3 bags of containers per week, plus flattened cardboard. If city collection ends, that business can't easily switch to a shared bin system. Many of these buildings rely on bags at the curb with limited storage and unclear responsibility between tenants and the property owner. In this scenario, private recycling pickup is commonly in the range of $250 to $400 per month and potentially higher, which is materially more than the effective cost of the city's current program. In fact, it's 3 or more times the cost. For a small operator already managing rising rent, food costs, and staffing pressures, that's a meaningful new monthly expense for a business service that supports diversion and keeps our main streets clean. So the values question for this committee is simple. Are we really prepared to tell the small businesses that animate our neighborhood corridors that they're on their own for a core public goods service at the exact moment we're asking them to keep investing in Hamilton, keep storefronts occupied, and keep our streets welcoming? The report outlines the decisions of our surrounding municipalities. Hamilton's employer business profile is typical of peer Ontario municipalities. In 2025, 56.6% of Hamilton employer businesses had 1 to 4 employees, comparable to Ottawa, London, and Barrie. Hamilton's Main Street sectors also align with its peers. Retail is approximately 10% of employer businesses, which is identical to Ottawa. And food services are roughly 6%, similar to many municipalities around us. This means Hamilton is not an outlier that can absorb a withdrawal of recycling service without disproportionate impact on small operators. Council should therefore continue municipal recycling collection for non-eligible properties as our forward-thinking municipal counterparts have done, and direct staff to implement a managed conditions-based model using things like registration, eligibility service limits, and/or fair fees, rather than a hard exit that forces small businesses into high-cost private contracts. So our request today is straightforward. First, recommend an extension of non-eligible recycling collection. This is consistent with the options defined in the report. Second, direct staff to come back with a recommended long-term service model that keeps recycling working for Hamilton's small businesses, including what conditions could make it sustainable, such as registration, clear eligibility criteria, reasonable service limits, and/or a fair fee structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. We have a few questions for you. First up is Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Councillor Spatafora was first.
Oh, my mechanism told me green light to you first, but I will honor your request. First up, Councillor Spatafora.
Thank you, Chair. Nadine, thanks for coming in today. Really appreciate it. I think it's an important conversation. It's one that I talked about when this was brought up the first time we were able to get an extension. I know you probably won't be able to give me the exact facts, but you're working with businesses every day. If this doesn't continue, can you see businesses going maybe out of business or choosing not to stay in business when you add that sort of expense every month to some of our small businesses? I know you can't guarantee, this is going to happen, but I'd like to hear from you what you think, how detrimental it'll be on some of our small businesses in the community. Through you, Chair.
Through the chair, there certainly are a number of businesses that are holding on day to day, week to week. So to add a $400 a month expense, if they can't afford to keep a part-time employee on, this is the equivalent to that. It could be devastating for especially some of these mom and pop shops. Again, we're talking, 50% of them are 1 to 4 employees. If the difference is pay for my recycling to get picked up or keep a part-time staff member, we're either going to see jobs lost or we're going to see the businesses shutter altogether.
Thanks for that. And we definitely, I would say these 1 to 4 employee businesses are the fabric of our community, right? These are not big businesses coming from out of town. These are Hamiltonians that have come here, laid down their business, and are looking for support. So I think you coming today and explaining that, I think it's important to hear it from you as opposed to someone like myself or another councillor. And hopefully, as this meeting goes on, we'll be able to find a resolution for the small businesses in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you for your delegation. Just a quick question. Has there been any engagement with the Government of Ontario on these changes?
I know through the chair, I know there has been some. There's specifically around the co-mingling, which is the sharing of vehicles, changes to the framework to include what are currently non-eligible sources in the framework. It really is a missed opportunity, I think, and unfortunately, I know you have another report coming as well, which clearly outlines that the city is actually considered a producer on the paper end of things. Mm-hmm. So there is a responsibility there regardless. I think this would just be an extension of that. And if it helps to achieve the environmental outcomes that this framework was initially intended to support, I think if it doesn't continue and we do end up seeing this stuff go into the garbage stream, we're undoing those environmental what we could be doing well, we'd be undoing it faster if we get rid of this.
Thank you. The reason I asked, I've shared this story before, but at the Roma conference in January, Rural Ontario Municipalities, which is a pretty friendly group to this government, there was one issue that resoundingly was not met with much fanfare, and that was this. And during the Bear Pit session, it was also made known by those heads of council from rural areas across this province. And a number of ministers said, okay, we've heard you. We're not adverse to making right what obviously is wrong. So I just wanted to know if you had if there was a community of small businesses beyond our very capable BIAs in Hamilton who have had any success with government members in this regard?
Very little from what I understand. We've certainly been invited to the table to provide our voices in support of changes to the framework, but I haven't seen any movement on it as of yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Crouch.
Thanks very much for your delegation. My questions are two. One is about other municipalities doing similar things. When Hamilton first did this and the motion got passed, I put forward last year to do this for this whole calendar year, I was contacted by councillors and mayors from other municipalities who said, what did you do? How did you do it? No one else is doing this. And so Hamilton was seen to be leading the way at that time. I think when you were giving your remarks, you mentioned that there are other counterparts, other cities that are doing things. Could you talk about that a bit more? Because I'm interested to understand what they've taken up from what we've done and how it's coming sort of back full circle.
Yeah, through the chair. In the report, it actually outlines surrounding municipalities who have either pushed the recycling collection privately or have continued to support it through the municipality. Most of those that have continued have done so with some sort of parameters in place, whether that be registration so that they know which properties are making use of the service. Some of them have done it as a fee for service. The truth of the matter is, even in that framework, we're talking about maybe a third to a quarter of the cost to the properties that could be supplemented in some way, as opposed to forcing the businesses to go private collection or the properties to go private collection. If we look at the municipalities that have done that, City of Barrie, City of Guelph, City of Ottawa, City of Toronto, Richmond Hill, and Sudbury, and Essex County as well. The only municipality that decided to do it without any restrictions is the Halton region. And then there was equal number that said that they were not going to continue, which I won't name.
Fair enough. My second question is about timing. So when this motion came forward last year, it was with respect to the budget at that time, and this is all happening around the same time because we were entering a new calendar year. The expiration and the province's timing was all accelerating, and so we said, okay, in the interests of doing this, we're going to make sure that it's addressed as quickly as possible, and the goal was to revisit it, right? Come back to this budget cycle coming. One of the problems with the budget cycle is that it usually runs over the year. And then we end up in a situation like we were before where, frankly, we have this strange staggered period. We're all waiting around for the budget to be done and for it to be approved to know whether or not businesses have that security. So I guess I wanted to get some thoughts from you about the experience on the other side of it, right? So ultimately, at a high level, we were able to do this for another year, and that's a good thing. But on the ground, watching the chaos of when the province started doing this, and again, in a very chaotic way, to when it actually got approved. How was that experience, and like what's important about doing this now as opposed to waiting for the budget process?
Yeah, through the chair, I think there's a really great opportunity right now that if we were to extend this, and I believe in the report there's two options. One is to extend to the end of 2027, and the end is to extend to the end of the contract. So both options are there. I think the time flies when your boots on the ground. Like we didn't know what was going to happen January 1. Now we're, beginning of July, and Christmas is right around the corner, which means Jan 1 is right around the corner as well. The truth of the matter is, at that time, we were hopeful that there would be some sort of a transition plan in place. And if I'm realistic, we knew this change was coming in 2023. It's 3.5 years later, and that transition plan is nowhere near in place. So if we think that we're going to be able to magically come up with that in the next 6 months, I think that's maybe not responsible. We do need a plan. I think we have lots of options, and I think staff has the ability to figure out what those options are and what's feasible and can create a long-term solution. I think the other piece that's important to remember, and why this came up at budget time, is this was initially a $9 million line item that we saved by having the responsibility for the residential go to the producers. So this isn't a spend of $2.8 million. This is still a savings of over $7 million. We just need to figure out what is the responsible way to move this forward instead of downloading those costs fourfold onto the properties?
Thanks very much. I appreciate those answers.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Taddison.
I do that all the time. Bit of a numbers guy on this. So if you wanted to continue recycling collection and you're non-eligible property, and you're forced to do so, do you have any estimates of what it would cost each of your businesses to do that? Has there been any numbers given?
Sorry, through the chair, just to clarify, as a private collection?
Yes, sorry.
Between $250 and $400 per month. It depends on the property and the type of collection. So if it has to be curbside versus a bin, which the majority of the properties don't have the space to have a bin that is also accessible by vehicles to pick that up, curbside and specific time frames for pickup all add to the costs.
So when I'm looking at it, it's like $2.8 million to run it for the 2,700. That's like just over $1,000 each. Would you be willing to pick up the cost for the city? Because that's like 1/3 of your cost. Isn't there some kind of solution there?
Through the chair, so $1,000 per property over the year is what it would cost if the city were to continue. Yes. So the question, just to clarify, is where can the city recoup that $1,000?
Well, I was wondering if the businesses would be willing to take a service from the city at cost as opposed to from private, which is going to cost 4 or 5 times as much.
So through the chair, I can tell you that some of the municipalities that have chosen to continue the service have created that framework. Whether or not that's what the staff would recommend, I couldn't say.
Understood. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you so much for your fairness. I just had no idea what it would cost you, so now I do, and I think there's a compromise solution there that's viable. Thanks for your delegation today.
No problem.
That exhausts our speakers list. Thank you so much. Okay, onwards to our next topic for delegations today, which is respecting report PW 26031, and we have Delegate James Kemp.
Just some notes, no PDF this time. We're all set? Oh, good. Okay, good. Well, welcome. Thanks, everybody, for hearing me again. I'm here to speak to PW 26031, Integrated Transit Pilot. Now, I first came and delegated to council, I believe it was AF&A, in October 2022 on the Dillon report regarding this issue. At the time, there were some concerns in the disability community about being reclassified and required to use a conventional transit or being required to participate in integrated transit. It's been a little bit of a concern all this time. We've been watching it roll out in Toronto. The TTC has been requiring some of their passengers to utilize the integrated transit or family of services model. It's not gone well. People with disabilities are struggling needlessly due to a system that's not actually built for us. Integrated transit does not help us in any way. The HSR has been unable to answer a simple question asked at every step of these discussions. Why would we want to use integrated transit service? What benefit does it serve us? How does this make our lives richer and more fulsome? Conventional transit and paratransit are apples and oranges. Combining them together requires adaptation, and the people being required to adapt are persons with disabilities. We struggle enough in our daily lives and do not desire it to be needlessly complicated by additional hurdles. Scheduling systems are incompatible. Trapeze cannot sync with HSR. Now let me take you for a second. You go and leave your house. So you booked a week in advance to get your darts ride to come to your house, to drop you off at the nearest bus stop. You catch the bus to take you wherever the nearest bus stop to your destination is, and then somehow you're supposed to connect with darts on the other end to take you the rest of the way. We have troubles connecting with darts on a door-to-door service. Being asked to connect not just twice in a single trip, but 4 times because it's a round trip, you got to come back and do it all over again, is just not feasible. I don't understand how you can book that a week in advance. While I understand this is a test pilot, and I appreciate all the work that the HSR has done behind it, these test pilots have some usual purpose in mind. So we're being told this is to provide us with more options and choice, but we don't see how it does that. From what we can see, it's merely a way for the 2 services to share costs. HSR on itself often struggles to carry those with people with disabilities relying on conventional service with only 2 PMD positions. Adding more to the system is not going to help. It's our opinion that this program will create barriers, not remove them. It was conceived by people without disabilities dictating how we should be able to live our lives. Nothing about us without us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. There's no questions indicated at this time. Thank you for your delegation. Okay, at this point, may I please get a mover and seconder to receive all the delegations from today's meeting? Thank you, Councillor Spadafora, Councillor Huang. Thank you both. This is a receipt, so it's a show of hand vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. On to items for information. First up is PW 25046A, recycling services for non-eligible properties after December 31st. May I first have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Councillor Spadafora, seconded by Councillor Huang. And over to, nope, we do have our director who's available to answer any questions. First up for speakers list is Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the director for preparing this. This is stemming from some conversation that's, I think, been ongoing in this chamber for a period of time. Chair, at the appropriate time, I do intend to move one of the options listed here, so I'll kind of put that out there, number one. But I do have some questions that I wanted to ask of the director. Also, just wanted to clarify, in the interest of full transparency, I'm a business owner in the city of Hamilton, and I have had this cleared with the Integrity Commissioner about 2 years ago, so I am permitted to engage in the conversation and vote on the matter, just to be upfront about that. Director, there's been a lot of, and sorry, you're behind me, so I hope you're watching, looking at the back of my head. There's been a lot of conversation in this chamber, as I said, over a period of time. Maybe it would be helpful if you could give some kind of a quick summary as to why businesses and other non-eligible entities, and I think we're talking about multi-res, residential, we're talking about daycares, institutional entities, they're no longer part of the standard Blue Box collection. It was, the residential portion was uploaded, but maybe a little summary for the benefit of those watching would be advantageous. Is that a possibility?
For sure. I should have put my notes on the back of your head and then I could have read them.
There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Angela Story, Director of Waste Management, through the chair to Councillor Beattie, who we have had a number of conversations leading up to today, and I've really appreciated them. So basically, just with respect to the sources in the regulation, the Blue Box regulation was specific to waste generated at a home. So single-family homes are included, multi-residential buildings are included, townhouse complexes are included, and then it extended to some not-for-profit long-term care homes and retirement homes. Also, some street-side litter containers, assuming people have got that waste at home and they went for a walk and then they deposited it into a street-side litter container. So those are the ones that were included. Therefore, not included, or the non-eligible sources today, biggest group are the businesses. The businesses do include, we sometimes like to separate out churches, daycares, medical buildings, the small businesses obviously that are BIA folks that we collaborate with all the time have brought up today. Also, city facilities. We did hear directly from the paramedics, from fire chief, about what are we supposed to do with our recycling going forward, because they're looped into this as well. And then we have a small number, Delegate Nadine did identify as well, some 10 large special event locations that we have. So again, the difference is regulation was intended for residential recycling, therefore those that aren't residential were not included.
Okay. We've had a lot of conversation. Thank you for that, by the way. We had a lot of conversation, and in some cases, I think it may have inadvertently been framed that this was downloaded upon us. Not exactly the case as I understand, and I think that the delegate actually spoke to that very, very effectively. The fact that it wasn't that it was downloaded, it just wasn't uploaded. And I'm wondering, prior to the transition, what was the breakdown in terms of what the city was responsible for full cost? Was there some kind of a provincial subsidy at some point? Can you break down who was paying for what and how that all mapped out pre the transition?
Sure. Through the chair. So prior to the full transition of the Blue Box program to 100% for residential properties, the city was funded through a subsidy from the provincial organizations of 50%. So each year, every municipality in Ontario would write into a data call all of our costs related to recycling. Remember that was collection and processing, and then also some marketed revenues that we would receive back for the material. So prior to, again, it was 50%. So if I give an example, in 2023, the overall recycling program cost just under $13 million. And what would happen in the data call is after you input those costs, a formula would be calculated to remove a percentage that was for businesses, usually around 2%. So in that 2023 example, the total was just under $13 million. Non-eligible sources for collection was $300,000, for processing was $88,000, and the marketed revenue that we got back was $47,000. So the total that the cost for non-eligible sources at that time was $341,000. So again, we were funded 50% through a subsidy. We would receive quarterly installments, and there was a formula to remove a percentage of properties that we were collecting from, which were deemed businesses.
Chair, one final question. I know I'm over my time. So I think what I heard is sorry, just to reaffirm before I ask the question, we were subsidized at 50% essentially in the Coles Notes version. The residential properties were given a 50% subsidy. The city received a 50% subsidy for the eligible properties. The non-eligible properties, we were 100% on the hook for ourselves. Is that a Coles Note summary?
Through the chair, that is correct. And the 2023 total amount was $18 million, not $13 million. I quoted that wrong.
Okay, bigger and bigger numbers. Director, why did we decide to go into the business of recycling for these non-eligible properties in the first place?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. Prior to, it was based on eligibility in our bylaw. So if you were serviceable and eligible for public waste collection, you were included. And noting the $341,000 on an $18 million overall cost, not negligible, but much smaller than we're paying now today. So that was the reason we included it then. It was based on if you are eligible for our program and you register with the city for garbage and other diversion programs, you were included. And so now just with the cost differences, that's where it's highlighted the change as to why we would have to think about continuing it going forward.
Okay, and by memory, that goes back to like the 1990s or something, the region of Hamilton Wentworth, and I seem to recall like a non-profit group that was originally contracted to do the recycling collection. I was just a teenager at the time, so I'm going by memory here. But I mean, it's a very long-standing program that we've been doing for a very, very long time.
Through the chair, if that is a correction or a question, that is correct. We know recycling started in the city of Hamilton in 1986, and I haven't been here quite that long, but for as long as I've been here, we have been collecting recycling from these sources.
Councillor Beatty, that does bring you past 5 minutes, so put you on a second time, if needed. Okay. Copy that. Yeah. Okay, next up we have Councillor, Crutch, thank you. My list keeps changing, sorry.
Thanks. I do have to leave for a medical appointment, so I won't be able to stick around for the motion, but I can weigh in at council. Briefly, just wanted to provide a bit of context I think is important. So this was originally slated to be paid for through to the end of the contract. That was staff's original recommendation, was to pay for it through the end of the contract in 2029 out of the savings we got from the program provincially. I acknowledge, of course, that the province is the one that put us in the situation because the costs were reasonable. Then the province said, no, I'm so sorry, eligible and non-eligible recycling are not friends anymore and can't go in the same truck. And so now we're going to increase the costs. And cities have had to cope with that. And that's ridiculous that we've had to cope with that, but we have to. I think when we look at fees and a fee for service, what I want to just caution is, cool, ask staff to look into that and to develop it at the end of the contract, but be mindful that that's not just an activity where we say, oh, no problem, we'll just apply that to the tax roll. No, it involves who the property owner is versus who the business owner is, how that's paid for. It requires a whole bunch of nonsense to go through with if people don't pay for them, how do you collect that from them? Can you add it to the tax roll? How you add it to the tax roll? There's staffing implications for all of that, right? So some municipalities may have already been set up in such a way that it was easy for them to do that. But in preparation for my motion last year, I had all these conversations with city staff. So I'm just being transparent about that. We talked about every possible option before we came to the point of saying the city should pick up the cost. So we already have a contract in place. It's really reasonable from my perspective that we just carry on with the contract we have in place till the contract is over and take that time to evaluate the other options so we're ready to do it. I think I hear what Councillor Tassin was saying earlier about the fee system. That's maybe a great option to do at the end of this contract, right? Because we can renegotiate our contract, and based on all the things that are going on, maybe we're likely to get a more favorable deal on that contract, actually. So there's a lot going on with the contract we already have. I think right now we've led the way and demonstrated to other municipalities what they can do. And the decision before us to continue that to the end of the contract makes sense to me. So I just want to weigh on that before I had to go and say I'm grateful we're having this conversation now, because I think waiting for the budget process is a problem because it puts us in that weird situation again where we're having to extend and do this and do that, and businesses don't have any certainty and don't know what's going on. It'd be great if there wasn't that anxiety like we had last year and we could predictably say to people, okay, until the end of the contract, we're going to deal with this, and then afterwards we'll figure it out. Anyways, wanted to add my bit of historical information and 2 cents. Thank you.
Councillor Spatafora.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Chair. A couple questions for me. I agree with most of the stuff that's been talked about here. I just wanted to ask the director, would you have, or does staff have a preferred go forward option other than ending? So if we weren't going to end, what would staff's go forward option be? Through you, Chair.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Chair. As you know, right now, the program is set to end at the end of 2026. So the two options, we had to go, even though it was an information report, we kind of had to pick a couple of options. So we did, as a delegate Nadine mentioned, we said, let's look at what it would take to extend to the end of this year, and then let's look at what it would take to extend to the end of the contract. So we don't have a perfect option that we would choose, and the reason for that is because we understand how difficult it is for the non-eligible sources to move forward with this change that, as Councillor Beatty alluded to, they've always been accustomed to. We would, however, recommend something that is not confusing. So it's either to end as our program is now at the end of the year. I understand when the businesses are out looking for their next option for recycling rather than putting it in the garbage, how difficult that is, what the expense of that might be. Our second option probably preferred, but I understand the budget impacts to it, would be to extend to the end of the contract. That gives us a big buffer window to determine when we have to make the next change. And it would also allow us to include these 2,700 properties in our tender for the next waste collection contract. Maybe get a lower price for the 2,700 properties, maybe not, based on, we currently pay based on 2020 rates, not based on 2026 rates. So we'll see there. So ideally it's end only because it's clean, or continue to the end of the contract also because it's cleaner than going year to year. It was mentioned, I think by Councillor Kretsch. Right now, we only have direction to continue it until the end of 2026. If it goes into budget, we will at minimum need to have direction to be able to continue it till after budget is approved, say March 31st or April 30th or whatever that might be, just so that budget can have its time with the program, and again, that communication program would happen.
Thank you for that, Director. And I was going to ask about the possibilities of the cost going down, but I think you've answered that question. I definitely don't believe the right approach would be to extend it again till the end of March so we can go through a budget. I think that's just messy. And I definitely don't think ending it, although it might be clean for everyone, it's not for me anyway, definitely not an option. So I look forward to Councillor Beatty's motion or whatever he's bringing forward to hopefully fix this once and for all. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Jackson.
Good afternoon, Chair Nan. Thank you. Director Story, I'm sorry if I'm going to be the fly in the ointment to complicate things, but with what we approved a few months ago through Councillor Kretsch's motion, if it was my misinterpretation, then I'll stand to be corrected. But I swear during that whole debate time, I know I weighed in that after the election, whoever's lucky enough to be here, whoever the new people are that may be on the new council, that from the mid-November, roughly inauguration, to the end of December, they would have a meeting or two opportunity to see if January 1st should be enforced, or if the new council had a preferred option and pathway going forward, understanding that the contract is concluded in 2029. What happened at new council?
Councillor Jackson?
October's election, having that opportunity to decide.
For a second.
Yep.
Sorry, we just lost you for a moment there in terms of your connectivity. So if you could just rewind yourself for about a minute and a half.
All right. What happened then, Director Story, to, in my humble opinion, the spirit of the new council between mid-November and December 31st, having an opportunity to let them decide the path forward? Through you, Chair Nan, to Director Story, if that kind of summarized and you caught everything I said?
Through the chair, absolutely, Councillor Jackson. I do not doubt that the spirit was there. We talked about a lot of different options and a lot of different timing opportunities through the budget motion. Councillor Kretsch did mention in his question that he's glad that this report is back here today rather than waiting to the last minute. So in your example of the next council, maybe getting it in their hands in November or December or January, maybe that would have been too late as well. So from a staff perspective, we based our go-forward plan on the motion, which identified that it be continued until the end of December, that it would be paid by the tax stabilization reserve, and that we would come up with the communication resources to be able to support the wind down at the end of this year.
Director Story, listen, debate is always healthy with different perspectives. I respect you very much. Anyways, Chair Nan, I'll just quickly conclude by saying, look, I've been on with extending it each and every time this term of council. I'm on for an extension of some kind. My preference would be still in the spirit of what I thought we ended our debate with a few months ago, that the new council could decide before January 1st what to do. And in my opinion, then let us put the deferral and put the extension, to April 1st of 2027. That would give the new council within 4 or 5 months an opportunity to decide. So I'm on either for that short term, or if necessary, then I'm happy to support Councillor Beatty's motion to 2029. I am definitely not on for any fee for service for the non-eligible sources, the NESs. They're already, many of them are just doing their darndest to survive in the economic climate we're in. Thanks, Chair Nan.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Tedison.
Just a question for the director. So there are non-eligible properties that are currently not being serviced with recycling in Hamilton. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, absolutely. Any business that we're not servicing would be getting their own, not just recycling collection, but other waste materials as well.
Okay, so they're recycling at their own costs right now. Do you have an idea, or do you have a number of how many businesses that don't receive our service are in the city right now?
Through the chair, thank you. We just did a little bit of research on this morning. Thank you, Manager McCormick. Delegate Nadine mentioned the 1 to 4 employees number in her delegation today. And we have here the business count for they're calling a micro business on the city's website. There's 9,614 of those at whatever date that was published online. Assuming most of our 2,700 properties are part of that group, it would be, roughly 30% are on our program, and the rest would not be.
So there's about 6,000 businesses, I guess, that have to pay for their own recycling. Are they? Do you know if they're paying for the recycling, or are they just like tossing in the garbage?
Through the chair, I hope they're doing their own recycling. However, anything going in the garbage, those businesses as well, while it's not environmentally appropriate for them to do so, the garbage of private waste haulers does not come to the Glanbrook landfill. So we wouldn't have data on that. Okay, fair enough. I get the recycling is important. I've led many recycling efforts in my school years, so I'm a recycling pundit, I guess. Now, let's talk about the landfill site that you just brought up. So diversion of this recycled material from the 2,700 non-eligible properties. One of the justifications for what we're doing here today is because it will extend the landfill of the Glanbrook site. But I'm not convinced that that's really going to be a big issue. So can we have from you, what's the amount of time we're actually extending the life of the landfill site if we adopt, carrying this for the next 3 years? Or if we don't, I guess is my question. Thanks. Through the chair, we estimated in our 2025 report that tonnages of blue box recycling from non-eligible sources was around 500 tons. And we currently process at the Glanbrook landfill 140,000 tons of waste per year. So in that, again, it was a number of months every year that would be extended in the landfill.
You know what, you're going to have to, I'm a little bit
Pundit Tedison needs a re-clarification of your last statement.
Can you give it to me in years?
Well, through the chair, if it was 3 months per year, it would therefore take 4 years to get a year. Right now, our Glanbrook landfill life, as you're aware, is to 2059. So if we didn't do it, it might take a couple of years off after 8 years.
Okay, so basically 3 years or so. But this is just for the 3-year situation that we're talking about right now, right? This isn't like a continuing issue. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Through the chair. So right now we're talking about this waste collection contract or this period of time, depending on what option we end up with going forward. We will likely, because it will be the will of council when we bring our tender specs back to council to talk about what we want to include in the next waste collection contract, we will likely be asked to include non-eligible source recycling in that. So today we're talking about to the end of this current waste collection contract, and then when we come back with those tender specifications, we will be asking, or you will be advising, the next council will be advising what we should be including in it.
Okay, thanks for clarifying some of my questions there. I'll just sit back and listen. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taddison. So at this point, we've exhausted our speakers list. And if I could pass the chair to Councillor Cassar, just a couple of clarifying questions. So through you, Vice Chair, staff you had mentioned that if we were to move forward with what I think Councillor Beattie is putting on the floor, which is extending to the end of the contract, there was discussion from the delegate, a recommendation, Delegate Ubel, that we extend and also then consult with those that are non-eligible for the potential of a hybrid after the contract, but that would give appropriate time for that transition planning for what comes after that contract. So if staff could just speak a little bit about that component, because it's not discussed in the alternatives to date, and if you could comment on that, please.
Sure, through the chair, thank you. Yes, we would, if we're asked to look at other options between now and when the next contract goes out, if we're not going to include it in there, we'll have to come back with some options. It was talked about today, the municipal scan that's included in the report, lots of different ways other municipalities do it. Most municipalities that include a user fee or a rate are a rate-based waste system, so they're paying for their carts, therefore they're paying for their garbage, etc. So that would be one example. Another one would be the City of Ottawa gives yellow bags. You know, you buy your yellow bags and you can put your recycling in the yellow bags. So that kind of a program. So we could certainly flesh out the details that some other folks are doing to make that happen.
Thank you. That's my only question. I'll take back the chair and now say over to you, Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So in the interest of simplicity, I would simply move, and I believe Councillor Spadafora is my seconder, to continue recycling collection service for non-eligible properties until the end of the current waste contract. Should there be a need to amend that for different language, I'm open to that. Between now and council, happy to do that. But for the sake of simplicity, I think that it's cleanest to do as I have stated here.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, and speakers list is open. First up is Councillor White.
Thank you. I'm in support of this amendment moving forward. I just wanted a question on cost beyond 2027. So because you've already identified that the cost is 2.8 for 2026, how do we find out how we'll continue to get those 2027, 2028, and obviously 2029 costs?
Thank you. Through the chair. The waste collection contract, similar to many multi-year contracts, include an escalation factor every year based on things like CPI, fuel, etc. So every year at the end of our service period, we would receive an escalation factor that the contractor has factored in. We circulate that with finance to make sure nothing's kind of weird about it, and then we would apply that to our next year's budget. So this year, in March, we received a very favorable, like 0% escalation factor. Waste collections had some high ones in the last few years. So a very favorable rate came through this year, which is why we've established the same cost for 27 as we do for 26. Next year, around March, we would then receive our escalation factor for the last 12 months that the contractor has experienced, and then we would apply that to the next year's budget. So we can't guarantee what it would cost or what the escalation factor will be, but that's how the contract is written.
Okay, my second question through you, Chair, is a question around, as we have those conversations in March, is there any way that we can have negotiations to try and lock in for the next 3 years, given that if this council moves that option forward, we are definitely looking at 2029. So can we lock in a rate?
Through the chair, Thank you for that question. It is something we brought up in our master plan meeting here at Public Works Committee as well. Not specifically for an end date of 2029, because that's coming quickly. We would need to renegotiate that with the contractor, knowing the way the world is today. There's likely, a small increase related to labor, a small increase related to using older vehicles, but we don't anticipate like what a full new waste contract would be. But I wanted to introduce here, because we did talk about it at the other meeting, we have a report coming forward on August 31st, actually to recommend or to request from council if we could extend our current waste collection contract from March 2029 to December 2030. That would give another 19 months at a very likely, more favorable rate than if we went out for a whole new 7-year waste collection contract with new trucks, et cetera. So that's why you may have picked up on information in today's report that said to the end of this current waste collection contract and any extensions that may be part of that waste collection contract. So our goal with that is, if we do extend the contract, in speaking with our contract partners, they are interested with this sort of guaranteed work for a longer period of time in opening up that contract to determine if we might get a more favorable rate now. So not even just locking in, but the hopes that maybe it would come down.
Okay, so supplemental, and then I have one final question. So then the supplemental then is, does this option need to be amended to include that potential new bit of information? Just because it might be cleaner that way, but.
So through the chair, it could just be identified as the end of the current waste collection contract, because then any extensions would be part of that, because it's not a new waste collection contract. The other piece, and maybe this is more to Councillor Beattie, is we will need a funding source. So it's one thing to extend it. It's another thing, is it part of the waste management's operating budget? Are we going to ask our friends in finance to try to look at other opportunities, et cetera? So Councillor Beattie, if you will, perhaps include something about a funding source in that motion. And thank you, Councillor Wang.
So anything to help you, Jeff, with all of that. But anyway, my last question through you is a question around procurement, because as we have just been talking about all of this, I know procurement's in an upheaval right now. We're doing a bunch of different changes to it. So how does the procurement process work in the next couple of years then?
Through the chair, we generally will start our procurement 2 years before the end of the contract. That allows us just under 1 year to award a contract, and then the next year for that contractor to procure trucks. So if we are keeping with the March 2029, we will need to start procurement in early Q1. If we are moving to December 2030, we'll start procurement a little bit later, but it also allows us to bring forward those reports that we talked about in the master plan meeting, so that you can have good information to be able to include that in the next procurement.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Huang. Next up, we have Councillor Kassar.
Thank you, Chair Nan. I find this topic incredibly frustrating, and I'm sure many of us do, but of course, we have to support small businesses, the lifeblood of the community, absolutely. Of course, we want to encourage recycling. I don't think those are debatable points. And if we were able to continue with the $340,000 cost for non-eligible sources that Director Story mentioned for 2023, that'd be a very easy decision. Compared to the $2.8 million that's before us now, that's 8 times as much. And I heard in the previous report it was 6 times as much because of the lack of commingling of recycling between the province and ours. So that's the really frustrating part here, because you can frame this as it's an investment in business, which, okay, we're supporting businesses as we should, but it's actually just costs we can't avoid, because the province is now increasing taxes for property taxpayers and provincial taxpayers combined, because now it's a lot less efficient. So there's a lot of talk about red tape and a lack of efficiency, and here we are being forced to do something that's incredibly inefficient. So I don't buy the argument that it's an investment. So it would be a lot easier if we could find a way that the non-eligible sources are eligible, or there can be some commingling. And this is just commentary because it's not going to be solved today. We need to continue to advocate. I know Councillor Wang through AMO is advocating, and AMO as an organization is advocating. We need to advocate. I would suggest those of us around the horseshoe here need to advocate because it's $2.8 million that's probably going to end up on the levy that shouldn't be on the levy. And I know we all want to reduce costs. So it's frustrating that we have to bear this, and everyone's doing it for the right reasons. I'm not directing anything against any individual. You know, it's kind of forced into a corner for this motion to extend the service, but it's a really terrible place to be in, and especially when the rhetoric, is, cities are wasteful spending money, we're inefficient, and there's too much red tape. So needed to say my piece here because it's incredibly frustrating to have to deal with these costs that we shouldn't have to, just because province made many sources non-eligible and then won't allow efficient pickup of the product.
Thank you for that, Councillor Kassar. Next up, okay, so Councillor Jackson, is this on the amendment and then also Councillor Beattie, I see you both at the same time and you're both second-time speakers, so. Correct, thank you for that. Councillor Jackson, your first time on the amendment?
Yeah. I was wondering, thank you, Chair Nan. I was wondering if it's in order, again, with the spirit of what I thought was approved a few months ago for the new council's window between mid-November. I was hoping that I could move an amendment to Councillor Beattie's amendment, if I could get a seconder to give it a whirl, that the extension of the NES pickup would go till April 1st of 27. I'm sure that Director Story, if that was hypothetically approved, could work out the contract details to extend contracts. That's been done many in the past. So if I could get a seconder, I'd like to give the, yes?
Councillor Jackson, sorry, you're cutting out again.
My apologies.
No, it's okay. Maybe just keep your video off
essence?
so we can prioritize hearing you clearly.
Can you hear me a little clearer?
Much clearer. So if
So
you
as
could
long
get to the
as you don't see me, it's better if you don't see me, Chair Nan, so you can hear me better.
Councillor Jackson.
Okay,
But
all
yes,
right, okay.
We can hear you loud and clear. If you could just read out your amendment, please.
So my amendment would be to amend Councillor Beattie's motion that the NES pickup service be extended to April 1st of 2027, if I could get a seconder. Thank you.
Okay, I saw a hand up from Councillor Pauls. Are you seconding, Councillor Pauls? Okay. So that's been moved and seconded. So we've got an amendment on the amendment. Even though there was a request to say if there's going to be amendments to the amendment, perhaps we do it at council. That said, the amendment to the amendment's been moved. Any discussion? All right, Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Chair, and I certainly do appreciate where Councillor Jackson's coming from. I think what I gleaned from the conversation is that we're in a better and more advantageous position in contract negotiation to go to the end of the term, which actually delivers better value and potentially lower costs in the long term. So in the spirit of trying to do this at the most reasonable, responsible cost structure to the municipality, I wouldn't be favorable to the amendment that's been offered.
Next up is Councillor Spatafora.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question to the director in regards to the amendment to go to April. So when do we got to start telling businesses, because technically we won't know. So, I mean, who knows who's going to be sitting here, but this comes up, goes through budget. If the budget decision is made in March, end of February, whatever that is, how are we able to communicate to the businesses that their service is ending if that new council decides to remove the spending from the budget? I'm more worried about how the communication or how we're going to plan for that if it is going to end in April.
Through the chair, thank you. Because our current communication plan is based on a rhythm of ending at the end of a year. So we did post budget approval this year, being granted the extension to the end of the year instead of just the first quarter. We sent our first letter out around April 22nd. Our second letter is scheduled to go out at the end of July. It could be the beginning of August, but right now in our Gantt chart, the next letter is going out at the end of July. It would be nice if it was either A, we're moving forward status quo, this is the second communication reminding of the end of the program, or, as you may have heard through committee and council, there's an appetite to maintain the program and extend it till whenever, so to change the wording in the letter as more of a go-forward plan. The next letter was going to go out in November, sort of as a final bit of communication. So if we were condensing it, extending the program to the end of March, but condensing the communication plan, because we would basically stop communication now except for maybe a letter saying, hold tight a little longer. We would need to, if budget was approved, say mid-February, we would have 6 weeks to communicate that information out to those businesses. And it sort of feels like deja vu from this year about, oh my goodness, budget is being approved, we only have 6 weeks. So I just feel like the cycle is continuing of the unknown.
Okay. All right, that's good for me, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, there's no further speakers, so we will take the vote on the amendment to the amendment first. The amendment to the amendment is Councillor Jackson's. The vote is just loading. Bear with us for a second. It's almost available. Okay, should be there. And so for those, yeah, again, it's the amendment to the amendment that would take it into the budget cycle of April next year. Councillor Pauls was a thumbs up. And that's defeated 2-11. And so back to the amendment that Councillor Beattie and Councillor Spadafora put to the table. Speaking on that one, Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, and recognizing Councillor Huang's comments and the director's follow-up in terms of a proposed funding source. So I kept it very simple and concise, but recognizing with the input from those around the table, I'm not sure what the timeline is going to be able to bring back some recommendations on a funding source. In a perfect world, I'd love to change the wording to ask for staff to report back on possible funding sources. I just am not certain what my deadline is going to be. So perhaps I could throw it to the bench behind me and see if they have some thinking of what might be possible. Would love to try to make this as neat and tidy as possible. Open to thoughts and ideas.
Through the chair, thank you. So 2 options, I think, is we could bring a recommendation report back. There's an August 31st meeting, which deadlines are already at. So October 2nd is Public Works Committee. So we could bring recommendations with alternatives on funding then. Or perhaps because it is an operating program, you direct now that it be added to the operating budget for 2027, and then we don't bring anything back. We just, are going to have the conversation naturally at budget then anyways, because it's in there. We could bring it as a council referred item to budget.
Okay, thank you for that. I lost track with the nuance of what specifically you said, but the second option in terms of putting it into the operating budget seems to me to offer the most stability. And I think at the end of the day, that is really the essence. We're trying to find stability for the municipality, stability for the end users. stability for all. So I'd be happy to change the wording to ask that this be included as part of the 2027 operating budget, if I've caught the essence of that correctly, Director.
Through the chair, yes.
So just so I'm clear as your chair, so you're saying that the program extension to the end of contract would be directed to be cost covered through the operating budget of waste services to the end of the contract term, period.
Through the chair, yes, I think we would go back to the way that it was in 2025, where it said this program continues. It's not band-aiding it from period to period, goes back into the operating budget, and if it's detected during the operating budget that somebody wants to talk about it, then we do it at that time. I don't think there necessarily would be an end, except for if we knew that it ended or the cost changed because a contract is coming up for renewal, then just that amount would be amended. And the new council or the council at that time will approve our new contract as part of the procurement process.
Okay, that's clear to me. It took me a second. Councillor Beattie, so then it's not coming back in as a council referred item. It would then be operationalized, and then at the term end of the contract, staff would be reporting back as per the program. Okay. Everybody else good? Any other clarifying questions? No, Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
No, my apologies. I do need clarification on the expenditures permissions here. Is the motion that's being put forward that it's not a matter to be deliberated in 2027 budget. It is an in-year commitment for a contractual extension until 2030, and could I get just feedback on that first part, please, through the chair?
There's just some conferring on the bench, so let's take a moment. I think it would be beneficial to put in the language of the amendment, Councillor Beattie, and maybe it's between now and council that we clarify the language, that piece get really clarified. Also with appreciation, the fact that this is committee and not all of council, and there may be other council members who have a similar line of questioning. So over to the bench.
Thank you. Jackie Kennedy, General Manager of Public Works. So appreciate all the dialogue through the chair. I think we do need to consult with the financial leadership on the exact steps that we're attempting to follow here, and would suggest that perhaps we can do that before this comes before council.
If I may, additionally on the consultation, just sensitivity to the permissions to expend that do affect a budget within the new statutory regime, which we have to follow. So if just making sure we're okay in that regard with respect to the role of the head of council, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you. Understood.
It's always helpful to have a budget committee chair in your public works committee. Okay, so we'll leave it as is and then bring language to council to clarify the funding source and any clarifying language there. So we'll leave it as initially moved and seconded. We've had an exhaustive conversation. Are we ready to vote? Let's go. Yep. Okay, that staff be directed to continue recycling collection services for non-eligible properties until the end of the current waste collection contract scheduled to end from March 31st, 2029.
Through the chair, I think that's okay. I think we might also want to add and any extensions to that contract. So Yep. Maybe it just says including any extensions to that contract. Thank you.
So replacing and with including. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Okay. Back to you, Councillor Beatty. We were just clarifying for the vote, but for the fourth time.
In terms of, sorry, Chair, and whoops, the language has disappeared from the big screen. If we could pop it back up for a moment. I wonder if it is cleaner to simply stop after contract, to the waste collection contract, period. Because it sounds like our current contract is 2029. We're in conversation about potential extensions. If we use language that says to the end of the contract, if that goalpost moves, the extension follows without need for messy language. Would that work, Director?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay.
Less words, always better. Okay, everybody's clear. The vote should be up shortly. And that carries. Thank you, everyone. On to 7.2, which is PW 26031. I lied. We have to go back to receive the correspondences to the last item. Moved and seconded by Councillor Beatty and Councillor Huang. And that's a show of hand vote. All those in favor, please indicate. Thank you. And that carries. On to 7.2, PW 26031, preparing for a future integrated transit pilot. Mover and seconder, please, to put the report on the floor. Moved by Councillor Spadafora, seconded by Councillor Huang. Thank you both. And Nancy Purser, Director of Transit, is available to answer any questions. First up is Councillor Huang.
Thank you. Just a question that the delegate kind of raised. I think that Delegate James Kemp talked about the user experience, and in his words, he talked about using a DARTS program followed by HSR, followed by DARTS again. So I wonder if you can just address some of those concerns, because I think user experience will be very important in this pilot. So I'd like to understand how staff are thinking through what user experience looks like.
Through the chair, Nancy Purser, Director of Transit. Thank you so much for that question. What we brought forward as an information report is the start of our planning of a pilot program. It's been something that has come up in the audits that we have seen over the last few years. And as we move into HSR next and start adding more on-demand areas in the city, it seems like this is an opportunity to work with our clients, our ATS clients, to offer them this service, have them try it, see how it works, what issues they find with it, so we can make it better, and then determine how to move forward with a more integrated ATS and HSR service. But we're taking it very slow, and it will be consultative the whole way through.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. I think my second question is, I do appreciate that in the report you talked about a customer journey map. But for me, a customer journey map is really a lot of different things, which may or may not be exactly where you envision what a customer journey map looks like. So could you just clarify a little bit about what your intention is on that customer journey mapping exercise then?
Through the chair, I'll start, and if I need to get more detail, I have staff with me. The journey map is really working with the individuals to understand how they move. Now, when we talk about integrated into conventional transit, it's mass transit. So there are individuals who this will not work for, and we know that. We know there are individuals who need to continue to use our specialized transit for their entire trip. So we will be looking at as many different journeys as possible as we start to roll this out. And again, understanding that some will only ever be able to use one of our services.
Excellent. Okay. I have a better understanding because when I think of a customer journey map, I think about sentiment and I think about their feelings around the service. So I think that for me, it was just a different wording. So will your analysis also include that level of qualitative research that might talk about how we might encourage more of that sentiment to have more positive feelings about riding transit? Because I think that will be informative when it comes to how we look at the user experience as well.
Yes, so through the chair, those sentiments will also be captured because it's really important that they enjoy their journey, that they're satisfied with how they were able to move. We hope it's as easy as it is today or easier. That's what we're going for, is just to provide more opportunities and a better customer experience at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Huang. Next up, we have Councillor Taddison.
Director Purser, I just have a couple questions. In the report on Appendix B and C, there's inconsistencies between the designated areas for Mount Hope. So I'm hoping that it's reflective of Appendix C as opposed to B, and Appendix C covers a larger area from 20 Road West to Rymel, and instead of just the surrounding village of Mount Hope, like it says in Appendix B. Can you clarify that?
Through the chair, you are correct. It should include the larger area as represented in Appendix C.
Okay, and then a further question. Mount Hope doesn't go all the way to Rymel Road, so does it include all the way to Rymel Road? There are surveys that are just off of Rymel Road, but they're basically in the city properties. When I say city, I mean not in Glanbrook or Mount Hope.
Through the chair, I'm going to have Sarah Hogue, our project manager, answer this question. It's very detailed.
Thank you.
Through the chair, Sarah Haig, project manager of Transit Strategy and Planning. Apologies for the confusion. So the difference between Appendix B and C, I'm not sure which one's which right now.
Appendix B is the one of the entire city.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Appendix B speaks to what was brought forward through HSR Next and is the final state of the growth plan. Appendix C speaks to how we are planning to introduce the zones in year one. So the final build out that was referenced in Appendix B is when all conventional routes are in place. Those routes are not all in place in year one. So we expanded the zones in Mount Hope and Stony Creek to make sure we had coverage of all of the areas until those routes are in place. Once those fixed routes are in place, the zones will kind of condense back to what was originally planned.
Okay, I think I got that. Thank you. Another question then. I see much of the focus speaks about transit users with disabilities. Does this MyRide on-demand service support seniors as well in those outlying areas?
Through the chair, the on-demand supports everyone in the zones, but as the report is speaking to integrated transit, the report's focus is on persons using our specialized service.
Okay, I'm going to need a little more clarity on that.
So through
is
the
that
chair,
darts?
Through the chair, everyone that resides in those zones can use the on-demand service.
Okay, thank you. Just some comments just then about the data. So it said that 50% shared ride increase would be seen as demonstrating better efficiency. What's the baseline for those shared rides there? Like if I look at the data and I say, oh, we take 10 shared rides and then we increase it to 15, well, that's a 50% increase. So what's the baseline? Do we have a number of increased rides in this? Do you understand what I'm talking about? Which part of the report?
Through the chair, we're just conversing.
Okay.
Through the chair, Councillor, could you be more specific where in the report you're seeing this?
Yeah, I guess it was just one of the charts. So you know what? I'll take it offline. That's fine. I just wanted to understand because we were looking at a shared ride service. We currently operate in the city with a shared ride service, and most of their rides are shared. So I'm trying to understand. I was just trying to understand what the 50% increase, why it's more efficient when we already have that existing in our service from DARTS.
Okay, so you're taking that question offline.
Yeah, I'll take that
Appreciate
offline.
it. Thank you. Okay, so no further speakers on this one. It is an information report before committee to receive. To clarify with a show of hands, please vote. Thank you. That carries. Next is items for consideration. Committee members, we have 5 in front of us. First up is 9.1, continuing blue block service at the community recycling centers beginning January 1st, 2025. Mover and seconder on that one, please. Mover in Councillor McMeekin and Councillor Francis. Thank you both. Any discussion on this item? Sorry? Makes sense. Ha, there you go. All right, it's before committee for electronic vote. Recommendations are before you. Thumbs up by Councillor Taddison. His computer robots died. Councillor Spatafor is out of chambers. And that passes 11-1. Next is 9.2, PW 26075, amendments to curbside yard waste collection schedule. Mover and seconder on that one. Let's get other folks on the table. Councillor Francis and Councillor Huang, thank you both. Any discussion on this one? Also makes a lot of sense to me, but any discussion? Any discussion? No takers? Oh, my apologies. Councillor Jackson.
I'll immediately remove the visual, Chair Nan. Okay, so Chair Nan, this is for reducing the amount of leaf and yard waste collection from 41 weeks to 38 weeks. Again, similarly to when we had budget a few months ago and reducing from 12 weeks, 12 pickups to 9 cuts for our boulevards across the city. Had a number of complaints. Several of my colleagues had even more complaints with the taller grass, which I voted against. And so I'm just going to ask to be recorded as opposed to this. Anytime that the taxes are going higher than above the rate of inflation, as has been this term, and it's a reduction of service that's being recommended from 41 weeks to 38 weeks, I'm not on side for that. Thank you, Chair Nan.
Thank you. There's no further comments or questions, so it's before committee for a vote. Councillor Taddison is indicating a thumbs up. And that carries 8-3. Next up is 9.3, tactile walking surface indicators at curb ramps and depressed sidewalks. May I please first have a mover and seconder to put the report on the floor, and then we'll open up for discussion. Councillor Huang, seconded by Councillor Cassar. Thank you both. Okay, speakers list is open. And before we do that, my apologies, we have a presentation from Manager Susan Jacob.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to present today regarding the tactile walking surface indicators at curb ramps and depressed sidewalks. To give a bit of background on this, the tactile walking strip indicators or surface indicators are more to provide a surface indication for underfoot experience for people with low vision or no vision. So the purpose of the presentation today is to discuss the use of tactile walking surface indicators to improve the safety and accessibility for residents who are blind or have low vision by updating the Hamilton standards to meet the provincial standards. It's also to increase the consistency with the Hamilton standards or the Hamilton streets and align it with the uses that is happening with the other municipalities. Continue to work with the ACPD committee or the accessibility committee for people with disabilities as well to determine the material and color of the tactile walking surface indicators. To give a bit of background, tactile current design standards, a history about that. As you heard from the delegates today, City of Hamilton was considered a pioneer in this industry because in 1990s, when there was no Ontarians Disabilities Act or any such act existed, City of Hamilton developed the Urban Braille Guidelines. Today's presentation is not about urban braille guidelines or changing that. It is only about the tactile walking surface indicators that is at the curb ramps and the depressed sidewalks. A review of the city practice was conducted in 2017 based on the AODA regulations, and it was approved by the council in 2018 to apply the current standards, which is the city standards, which uses the black stamped concrete, and we'll explain that further in the next slide. So the current standard includes a black concrete, stamped concrete surface, which has got tactile warning on it with a 25 millimeter deep grooves, which is behind the curb, and 150 millimeters behind the curb, 610 millimeters in width. It is also providing a directional line, and the directional line provides a guidance for the users to go on to the crosswalks. To give a clarification, the AODA standards ask for raised tactile indication. This does not completely meet that. We did several attempts at improving these standards over the past years. Rationale for updating the existing design. Some of the things that we are seeing currently is that Hamilton standards does not meet the provincial standards. We do not align with that. In Ontario, other municipalities are already using the truncated dome-style tactile walking strip indicators. And the provincial standards is based on the Canadian standards, and the Canadian standards clearly indicate tactile as truncated use of truncated domes. International standards, as mentioned previously as well, and the Ontario Building Code as well requires truncated domes as the tactile walking strip indicators. Having a design that is not consistent with the provincial standards also brings in several nuances. Some of the other considerations that we want to look into is the OPSD tactile walking surface indicators are used in facility projects as required by the Ontario Building Code, as well as on parking lots, at pathways and so on. It is being utilized currently even in City of Hamilton. The stamped colored concrete has got several maintenance issues because the colors fade very quickly, and also the surface grip or the friction is not very consistent. It deteriorates very fast. The product or the application of the stamped concrete version is not very consistent throughout the city. It changes each time with a lot of changes that we are seeing with the contractors not being consistent either. The members of the public, as you've heard as well, when they move from city to city, do experience this inconsistency as a difficulty. So the proposed change is here that staff is recommending that the design standards be updated to refer to the OPSD, which is the Ontario Provincial Standards. In addition to what is in the OPSD, we heard from Accessibility Committee that they would like to see the directional lines be added. The directional lines as we have now will be added to, in addition to the OPSD tactile or the truncated dome-style tactile walking surface indicators. Some of the benefits of adopting provincial standard is that it aligns the city practices with the current practices of the accessibility standards between city and the provincial standards. Reduced number of facilities that we are creating which are in non-compliance. Greater consistency between city-owned projects and the projects that are undertaken by provincially and federally funded facilities. Creates a more consistent experience for the people with disabilities traveling within and outside Hamilton. It improves the maintenance through the use of standard products tested throughout North America. Ontario's Bill 60, that is the harmonization bill that is coming forward, is looking to harmonize the standards that we are using throughout all the municipalities, and it's coming in by July 2027. Awareness building activities. So the first attempt at meeting with accessibility committee for the persons with disability was on April 7th. A presentation was done in there. And there was a difference in opinion at that meeting. But followed by their suggestion, we met with the Built Environment Working Group, and it was on April 20th. Subsequent to that, we did presentations at the Canadian Council for Blind for seniors kickoff event that was conducted by the Age-Friendly City of Hamilton group on June 11th. And we also did several drop-in engagements throughout the city in Sackville Recreation Center, at the Bernie Morelli Recreation Center, and also at City Hall. These were all well received. I had the opportunity of meeting with more than hundreds of people throughout the city, and of varying abilities, age, ethnicity, and so on. So it was a good effort in communicating to the public the changes that is happening with the road design standards, and it was very well received. Some of the feedback and summary are that persons with vision loss are the most vulnerable ones who are the road users. They are the most vulnerable users, and the update of the Canadian standards over the time. I should mention that previously it used to be staggered pattern, now it is square grid pattern. It allows more mobility devices to be accessible through these tactile walking surface indicators. We also did a quick poll with all the people that we met, and primarily people with seniors, people with vision loss and so on. They primarily asked for canary yellow as a standard moving forward. Ease of maintenance and the type of products that we are using will have to be further looked into. Staff will continue to engage with the ACPD committee to develop the appropriate or pick the current appropriate materials and color for the application of the tactile walking surface indicators. So the recommendation is that staff be directed to update the road design guidelines to reference the OPSD or the Ontario Provincial Standard specifications and drawings, in addition to adding the directional lines. That staff be directed to continue coordination with the advisory committee for people with disabilities, and staff be directed to develop an implementation plan, as these changes will be implemented only in the new constructions, and we need to have a plan to replace the ones that are existing as well. With that, I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Manager. So we have a couple of speakers on the speakers list. Questions on the presentation. First up, Councillor Alex Wilson had indicated earlier, so I'll go there first, and then Councillor Huang.
I have questions on the report, so up to you, Chair, if you'd like to hold or not. I'm not sure what the difference between the report and presentation given this, so I'll just let you know and hold for your guidance.
I will pause you there then, and then ask Councillor Huang questions on the presentation. Or are you in the same boat? Same boat. That's what I figured as much. So, Manager, it's up to you if you want to stay standing there or if you want to take a seat at the bench, and then we'll open up the floor for questions that can be going into the details around the report, in which case first up will be Councillor Alex Wilson.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just trying to understand some of the feedback we heard today, reconciling that with the recommendations in the report. My read of the report is that some of the urban design elements, two that are specifically mentioned are the street names and the shorelines on one of the pages of the report, will be carried forward. And so effectively, in some way, the carry forward urban design guidelines will be that hybrid where there'll be some elements that may not be standardized across Ontario, like the street name or the shorelines, but the specific signaling, hey, there's a walkway here, will be potentially changing or hybridizing. I heard the lines may also stay or be included. Could you just help me understand, maybe using some different language from the report, but is what's being kind of recommended a carry forward of some elements as well as a change to one specific typology, or one tool in the toolbox is changing, but the rest of the tools in the toolbox are staying the same? Is that the correct understanding?
Through you, Chair, yes, that is a correct understanding. The urban braille is currently applied only in the BIA or business improvement areas within the city of Hamilton, as well as the other area municipalities around. So this was a decision that was made a few years ago. All those elements for the urban braille design guidelines will remain the same. The only aspect that is changing is the AODA requirement, which requires that the tactile walking surface indicators be provided at all curb ramps. This is for not only within the downtown area or the BIA, it will be applied for all the neighboring, all the neighborhoods, including the new neighborhoods that will be built through the subdivision plans.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I'm certainly supportive of the report and the recommendations. I guess my question is, I also heard from some of the delegates this morning I guess, an interest in maybe doing something that's been scoped out of the report, which is looking at the urban design guidelines and actually doing a refresh of some of those, the urban braille guidelines, in addition to doing this update, to make sure that there's a synergy, or if there is a best practice that we're currently trying out in BIAs, that best practice could be brought in maybe our more residential enclaves or other areas of the city as we bring this online. And so I understand that this review is maybe scoped to be smaller, or maybe looking at one tool in the toolbox as opposed to the toolbox specifically. But I heard there was some interest from the delegates in looking at the broader toolbox or the holistic picture as we're updating some standards, just to make sure that we're not missing an opportunity to have a best practice included in, say, some of those outside of BIA pieces, if there is something we wanted to carry forward or put in. Is there a comment about what that review might look at? Or I'm just trying to understand the activity was to look at this tool as opposed to the whole toolbox. Is there an interest in looking at the toolbox? Do staff see some synergies in looking at that, looking at updates to the broader guidelines in the context of this update? Just trying to understand, because I think that line between consistency, both between Hamilton and other cities, but also within our city, is one of the balancing acts, as well as kind of cost and just ease of use. And so trying to understand where staff are seeing the biggest bang for our buck, or how we can be strategic in looking at this update.
Thank you, Councillor, for that question. And through you, Madam Chair, the response for that is the urban braille design requires wider sidewalks because the shorelines have to be provided. It does have more cost implications as well. It is ideal for places with high pedestrian activities. These were some of the reasons that were cited previously years back, when that decision was made to remain with urban braille only in the BIA or high intensity areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, maybe just a comment from me. I think I heard there was an interest from our advisory committee in kind of having conversations with staff about those design guidelines. I also hear that this is a pretty kind of simple change to our design guidelines, and we're standardizing. And so my personal preference, not to say question, is not to hold anything up, but I am aware that there was a concern raised from some of the delegates about potentially a missed opportunity if we move forward with a new standardized design, and then we decide after maybe in a couple of years, oh, we should have done this plus one other element, or if we do look at those guidelines. And so I just maybe repeating back what I've heard today, that there is some interest maybe in looking at those guidelines more broadly, but appreciating what's in front of us is just an update to one specific tool in that toolbox.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have Councillor Hoyne.
Councillor Alex Wilson took all of the words right out of my mouth. So I think that's where I was hearing from a lot of the delegates, that they're looking at not just this one tool, but maybe looking at the whole, because there hasn't been an update to the urban design, urban braille guidelines essentially for a long time. I want to say 30 years, but I don't think so. I think it was like 2018 was the last time that it was sort of updated. So what are your thoughts on putting that, so because part of the recommendation is to go out to community, and what is your appetite on like just trying to look at this scope a little bit further than just the tactile surfaces?
Thank you for that question again, Councillor, through you, Chair. My thoughts on that is that we do have some major projects that are happening immediately. Something like Main Street Renewal Project, which is several kilometers and intersections that are going to be impacted. If we delay the process for urban design guidelines to be updated, we lose opportunity to make it happen. The Built Environment Working Group, which is a subset of ACPD, wanted to make sure that the Main Street Renewal Project is following the similar standards as the King Street LRT project. For that reason, I would say that keeping the two separate would be beneficial, because lost opportunities is the reason why I would suggest that.
So I think through you, Chair, my intention is not to hold up anything like the Main Street or the LRT project at all. I'm thinking like as we are continuing into this sort of additional built form that we are trying to be a little more fulsome when it comes to that. But nothing, I wouldn't want to jeopardize anything that's currently in flight. So this is where I'm asking, like, is there appetite to even look at updating the whole toolbox for later projects in the future, so then that way we have a much more inclusive design moving forward. So is that something that we can look at? And I can always take this offline to actually have these conversations. But as you heard from all the delegates, I think that was one of the intentions, is to have that moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Chair. We definitely want to take into consideration the comments from the ACPD. We'll continue to work with them. And as you heard me speak today, the directional lines will be continuing because that was a suggestion from ACPD as well. Similar to that, we did extensive consultation throughout the city. And that was also a comment that we heard from the ACPD committee. So we definitely want to hear their concerns and work along with them. The downtown revitalization strategy project is looking into the expansion of urban braille system as well. So there are opportunities in other projects and working with the ACPD to improve upon those.
Okay. Yeah, my last comment then is that there are other stakeholders and groups that are in addition to the ACPD. So I think that one of the delegates, Tim, had also identified several other groups that might be available and interested. So again, I'll take this offline and connect with you afterwards and have these conversations again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huang. That exhausts our speakers list on this. So thank you again, Manager, for the presentation and for fielding the questions from committee. So at this point, we already had a mover and seconder for the presentation. We'll go with the same and amend it to both receiving the presentation and approving the recommendations in the report contained therein. So it's before committee for a vote now. Councillor Pauls, just double checking, are you online? If so, please indicate your vote. Otherwise, we'll mark you as absent. Okay. That carries. Thank you. On to 9.4, PED 260. Nope, I lied. Correspondences need to be received. Same movers and seconders. Correspondences, show of hand vote. All those in favor of receiving the correspondences? That's everybody. Thank you. That carries. On to 9.4. PED 26080, transition of the Hamilton Cycling Advisory Committee to the Active Transportation Community Liaison Group. Mover and seconder. Moved in Councillor Cassar, seconded in Councillor McMeekin. Any discussion on this recommendation? Seeing none, it's before committee for electronic vote. And that carries on to our OBL for today. Councillor Cooper, are you good to move it? Just getting you on the board today. Moving the OBL, outstanding business list. Anybody else? Councillor Spadafora seconding it. Any discussion on the outstanding business list amendments? Seeing none, then it is before committee for electronic vote. That carries on to motions. 10.1, request for additional measures to prevent truck access on escarpment access roadways, Ward 10. Councillor Beattie, if you could please introduce your motion and seconder.
Thank you, Chair. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Maureen Wilson. I'm going to read it out and then I'm going to explain. I've got a couple of motions here that are non-standard. This isn't something that comes before this body very often, so I do want to make sure that everybody is fully aware and fully understand what the ask is here. So let's start as, whereas Ward 10 is home to 3 important escarpment access roadways at 50 McNeely and DeWitt Roads, and the upper portion of the roadways being located in Ward 9. Whereas these roadways provide vital connection points for businesses and residents from both Hamilton and neighboring municipalities, whereas additionally these roadways are used to transport agricultural equipment between rural farm areas in Upper and Lower Stony Creek, whereas the steep grade, narrow roadway and hairpin turns on these roads make usage by trucks dangerous for both road operators and other road users, whereas these roads are not, and that's emphasized, part of the city's approved truck route network, whereas despite recent upgrades to permissive and restrictive signage and additional police enforcement at the request of the Ward 10 councillor, heavy trucks continue to use these access roads. Whereas the temporary closure of DeWitt Road due to slope destabilization and resultant rock slide has caused consolidation of illegal truck usage on the remaining escarpment roads. Whereas trucks are becoming stuck or disabled on 50 and McNeely Road as a result of illegal use of the road, and this is becoming a weekly occurrence. Whereas emergency unplanned road closures due to the above are impacting local and regional residential population, the economy require the use of city resources, including first responders, transportation staff, thereby inefficiently using taxpayer dollars. Therefore, be it resolved that the Transportation Division, in consultation with the Ward 9 and 10 Councillor's Office, be directed to implement any and all measures possible to restrict or further dissuade illegal truck access on McNeely and 50 escarpment roads, including but not limited to additional signage, lighting, warning devices, physical road alterations using operational funding sources. That any option for truck access controls that may require additional authorization or funding from council direction be presented back to the Public Works Committee at the earliest opportunity for consideration. That any additional control measures for truck restrictions at DeWitt Road be considered as part of the existing emergency remedial work currently in progress, and that the implementation of the above measures ensured to any implementation of the above measures ensure continued access for agricultural equipment on the above roadways if needed, and if needed, consultation with local farmers be arranged to ensure agricultural equipment access is not impeded. The Coles notes, Chair. We have 3 escarpment accesses. None of them are appropriate for truck usage, haven't been ever. And yet we continue to see illegal truck usage on these roads. And I'm talking about full-size 53-foot tractor trailer, semi-trailer units, heavy truck, and it's happening day after day, week after week. And we have been trying through traditional means to improve the signage to try to dissuade these operators. We have tried to use police enforcement, and it's just not working. And last month, there were literally 3 in a row trucks stuck at the hairpin turn at the top of these escarpment accesses. In addition, on McNeely Road, a resident actually went out and stopped 2 tractor trailers that were trying to go up McNeely Road and just warned them and said, guys, you're going to get stuck. And they ended up then having to back down the road, going backwards in a 53-foot, 2 in tandem, side by each, going backwards on one of our busy collector roads. It's not safe. It is jamming up these roads. It's causing unplanned closures. It is affecting people's lives, not just those that live on the street, but those in close proximity, those above the escarpment, below the escarpment. I've had multiple conversations with Councillor Clark, who's been included in the formation of this. We're both in agreement that we just need staff to have the empowerment to be able to simply do more. And if there's something that goes above what they're able to do in terms of the options that they have above them, please bring it back before this body so that we can finally get to the bottom of this and stop these damn trucks from being stuck on these damn roads.
Thank you for that very in-depth Coles note and for your motion. I appreciate it. I am actually going to pass the chair over to Vice Chair Kassar, and I have a couple quick questions on this one. completely in support of the motion, just some procedural questions. So empathizing, consistency is key. We've had several places where there's been reoccurring bad behavior on the part of truck drivers driving in places that are absolutely not part of the truck route. Wondering how this might inform our best practices as we go forward. There's a number of suggestions here that are already indicated or included in our truck route marking, which is signage. What I don't have across the city is warning devices, lighting. We have had some physical road alteration. So if I could, through you to staff, what might we see as an outcome of this motion being implemented in terms of recommendations for other areas where we see repeat misuse by heavy truck drivers? I think I'm just gonna stick, sorry, the chair is over there, so. Oh, my apologies.
Yeah, so I think we'll just take the question to staff, and then if you want to add on to it, then go ahead. So who can answer that?
So through the chair, I'll start, and maybe Vince will also chime in as well. So Steve Malloy, I'm the Acting Director of Transportation Planning and Parking. So in terms of measures, again, as we have all gone through this over the last several years about how to do enforcement and enforcement through design, certainly signage alone is and relying on enforcement is somewhat ineffective, but if there's oversized signing and there's some other flashing beacons, I know there has been other measures of overhead structures, especially in this particular context. I think any kind of engineering solution should be context sensitive to the location and what's most appropriate, as well as consulting with the appropriate stakeholders, as the councillor had put in his motion, the agricultural community, and making sure that any type of design is considerative of those types of farm equipment that may be traversing as well. So I think anytime we introduce an engineering solution, there's a learning curve, there's a lessons learned from whatever type of mechanism that we will put in. So not to go wholesale and implement it throughout the city, but certainly to use any kind of new design as a learning moment to see how effective it is and adjust accordingly to make sure that we have effectiveness throughout the city.
Thank you. And if I could, through you, Vice Chair, there's several different mapping tools that are used digitally by drivers as they go from city to city, driving regionally, nationally, and even internationally. Any report or progress there in terms of where is Hamilton's truck route as it relates to digital mapping tools that are used in the industry?
So through the chair, we continue to have conversations with the Ontario Trucking Association, who are on the same side as us, to have good actors and to promote. We have a GPS layer that's available on our own city website that's available to provide to logistics companies so they can do route planning. We continue to have conversations with MTO to tap into the 511 system. We will continue those conversations. We've had some struggles in the past, but we'll continue to lobby through that avenue to make that available. And again, we're having some conversations with Google Mapping, if there's a layer, to have that specifically on their system that is currently not there. But of course, that information is available through our own networks and other adjacent municipalities that have truck routes that can be created.
Thank you for that. And through you, Vice Chair, final question is the therefore be it resolved asks for a report to come back that itemizes the additional costs and authorization to implement this. When would the timeline for that report back be?
Through the chair, I would direct that to Director Sfraza.
Through the chair, Vince Sfraza, Director of Transportation. So just to clarify, there are some initiatives that we can take right now without having to report back. So we have already put some plans together for additional signage and different types of awareness measurements. So we are going to be doing that within the existing budget. So If there are measures that go beyond our existing budget, then we will report back to this committee. If I had to venture a estimated time, I would think it would probably be Q1 of 2027.
Okay, great. No further questions. Thank
Back to you.
Thank you. Next up, we have, oh, go ahead, Councillor Beatty.
Sorry, through the chair, whoever's
No,
chair.
I'm back in chair.
The reference in the therefore be it resolved to some of the additional signage, lighting, warning devices, physical road alterations, et cetera. It's based off of some additional treatment that was given to another escarpment access. It's not in my ward, it's in Ward 5. It's called New Mountain Road. And there were a number of additional signs put up, flashing lights, things of that nature. So just in very simplistic terms, and I think that the director already spoke to this, some of the things that I'm hoping to see would be additional measures such as we have already implemented in other escarpment crossings in Stony Creek. It just happens that it's in Ward 5, not Ward 10. That would be the baseline. And then as the director outlined, the Cadillac thinking, the over and above, what can we do that is outside the box that may be non-standard in terms of the ask? That would be what that report in Q1 2027 would come back to.
Got it, thank you. Next up is Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you. I'm very appreciative of this motion and was eager to second it because the safety of Councillor Beatty's community is of utmost importance, I think, to all of us. And many of us have escarpment crossings in our wards. Some of us share those crossings with our colleagues, and they have been the subject of conversation and concern since our election in 2022. There are also trucks going up the Queen Street Hill, which is a beautiful drive, but it is not conducive to big rigs. To that end, I should know this because I sit on the truck group subcommittee, but could I be reminded through the chair, these rigs are hauling goods for business, and the capacity for us to be able to identify the license plates, that's a permission that has to be sought and delivered and approved by the Government of Ontario, yes? Through the chair.
Through the chair, correct. A license plate would have to be through the MTO.
And through the chair, to in your professional circles, has that ever been a subject of discussion when there have been identified clear and present dangers and public, public safety objectives identified that may come with big trucks in residential or environmentally sensitive and or narrow, windy areas? Through the chair.
Through the chair, not from a license plate perspective, but I have on a few occasions any known business on a vehicle, whether it's the cab itself as the operator or on the trailer of a business. I have personally reached out to different companies to inform them that they need that. Were they aware that their trucks are off the truck route in these situations? Because it's a bad look for that company. So I do encourage many residents and councillors, if they're aware of certain violators or companies who are doing these acts, to reach out to my team, and we will reach out to these companies, and also through our partners through the Economic Development Division, to work together with Goods Movement to stop this. And even the Ontario Trucking Association, they don't want to be associated with these types of bad actors, and they want to have a good reputation. So the more knowledge we have to educate and to dissuade that type of activity, the challenge will be, again, the independent contractors who aren't associated with the business. That will continue to be a challenge for everyone. So I don't have a solution to that. But the larger companies, there's something we can work on.
Okay, thank you. So just so I'm clear that if a resident takes note of that, they're able to pass along that information through the reporting mechanism, and we take action because it's in our collective and business interest to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Beatty, one more time on this one.
Thank you, and I appreciate the ability just to layer on some additional information, Chair, and maybe I'll make the statement, and perhaps Director Malloy can validate it. All commercial operators in the province of Ontario are assigned a commercial vehicle operator's number, which is called a CVOR. It is by law, in most cases, to the best of my knowledge, must be posted on the side of the vehicle. And I believe that this information is also very important for investigations that are taking place. Would that be something that is collected by city staff, or is that strictly used in MTO operations?
Through the chair, if that is provided to city staff, we could follow up with Hamilton Police with that information.
Okay. I would recommend, for all those watching, grab the CVOR number. That is the owner of the truck, not necessarily the driver. And the penalties to the truck owner are often more severe than just getting a slap on the wrist as a driver. So I'd make that offer to folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's before committee for a vote. Carried. Next one is 10.2, request for reporting of current and further expansion of whistle sensation zones in Ward 10. Councillor Beattie, I'm just going to declare my interest of adjourning at 4:30. So please focus and be concise.
Thank you. So I'll go to the Coles notes first then. You're welcome. Half the battle here is pronunciation of cessation, which I practiced in the mirror many times. The Coles notes is this. In the 1990s, the city of Stoney Creek negotiated with Transport Canada and CN Rail for a series of whistle cessation zones in the lower Stoney Creek Ward 10, current Ward 10 area. We've kind of lost track of where those are. And what's happened over a period of time, Chair, is that rail traffic, both freight and passenger, has increased. In the 1990s, we didn't have GO trains going through Stoney Creek and Winona. We do now. In fact, we have a rail layover yard at Lewis Road, right in the heart of the community, which sees a substantial amount of GO train traffic. And it is causing a lot of disturbance. The rail line for CN is located through the middle of our residential area, although it is also through the commercial and industrial district. It is affecting those that live in the residential area. So this motion asks for us to, I'd say, reestablish the existing whistle cessation zones. I believe I have a rough idea of where they are. My mom was a city councilor in the 90s. I called up mom and said, hey, do you remember? And it turns out she had some notes from the 90s. She never throws anything out. Thank you, Mom. And building upon those existing whistle cessation zones, bring us back a framework. It does require a motion of council and to enter into an agreement with the rail providers and to make the application to Transport Canada. I've done pretty extensive research on this in preparation of this motion. So 2 parts, reestablish the existing cessation zones and then bring forward recommendations on how we can move forward to expand upon those for all rail crossings within the ward, noting that at Centennial Parkway and Fruitland Road, we have subgrade or underpasses, so there's no rail crossing there. It doesn't ever cross over, also at Lake Avenue in Ward 5. So I'm just specifically looking at the at-grade crossings where we have the gates that come down and whistles are required to be blown by law unless there's an agreement in place with the rail provider to say otherwise. And there are some clarification notes that need to be made on what that entails, but that's what I'm trying to ask staff to do. Hopefully that's relatively straightforward. Councillor Mark Tattison is my seconder.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Huang. Press the wrong button, sorry.
Thanks for this. I'm a little bit torn on this because I do have residents that are in Ward 4 that are blind and deaf. So actually having the whistle at train crossings is a necessary and safety factor. So I am interested in the report back, but it is something that is really hard for me to reconcile. So I wonder if I might ask perhaps Director Sferrazza on how will you prepare this report? Given that today we had a blind man that was a delegate, and specifically afterwards we did talk a little bit about a rail crossing in Ward 4 where, again, the most vulnerable in that ward is a blind and deaf woman that cannot cross at that rail crossing because there are no barriers there. And as a deaf as a deaf person, she has a little bit of hearing, but it's not, so she does rely on the clangs and the whistles and in order to help with her navigating that. So I wonder, how will you prepare this report, especially taking into account some of our most vulnerable that might require that level of whistling that might happen?
Through the chair. As you indicated, I believe the report does have to consider multiple factors such as people with disabilities. And if in fact a whistle cessation does serve as an alert system in order to prevent any fatalities or serious injuries for any potential people walking or vehicles crossing the area. So having said that, I believe the report would need to consider the impacts of either allowing, preventing, or somewhat delaying whistle sensations on various communities, such as those with people with disabilities, factoring also the impact on neighborhoods, impact on city services, such as winter maintenance, because we do have to cross railway crossings with our plows and our salt trucks. So we will look at this from multiple angles and multiple perspectives.
Okay, thank you. I just hope that I can just impress upon you that we have very vulnerable users that would require that level of safety as well. I know that in this motion, we're not talking about getting rid of arms or barriers or anything like that. I know it's just about the whistle cessation. You're right, Jeff, it's the hardest word there. But yeah, if there's any way for us to really consider all pedestrian and road users in this particular motion, so then that way we have a balanced view when the report comes back. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Councillor Huang. Thank you so much. If I can pass the chair to you, through you, Vice Chair, just on the last point from Councillor Huang, another population of consideration is youth and noise cancelling headphones. And yeah, as somebody who's had a tragic accident and death in my family as a result a 15-year-old passing away on the rails, it's a tough one. So from that perspective, if that report could really speak to the depth of consideration around pedestrian safety, it would be deeply appreciated.
Through the chair, yes, the report can certainly look at the impacts on all users, all potential communities living within and residing in the area.
Thank you. Taking the chair back, Councillor Beattie, second time.
Please. Thank you, Chair. Just to maybe give comfort to some members of committee here, I'm pulling from Table D1, which is the Transport Canada requirements for warning systems at public grade crossings with an area without whistling. Column 5, 2 or more tracks, which fits the bill here. A full, what is it called now? Flashing lights and bell and gate system is required for trains that are traveling over 81 kilometers an hour, which does fit the criteria in some cases here, which all of these crossings currently do have. So if we were in a position, we were talking about grade crossings that didn't have this mechanism, they would not be eligible, and that would be coming back in the report. But I do want to make sure that people are aware that we are talking about crossings that already have that equipment in place, ensuring that it is validated by transportation staff, and part of the reporting would come back to say that. And those are baked into the Transport Canada applications that we'd be making.
It's before Committee for Electronic Vote. That carries, and with the same mover and seconder to receive the correspondence, which is a show of hands vote. All in favor? Thank you, that carries. On to 10.3, installation of speed cushions as traffic calming measure in Ancaster Ward 12. Councillor Kazar.
Thank you, Chair Nan. If we can take a quick detour from Ward 10, hop up to Ward 12 before going back. My seconder is Councillor Tattison. This is to install speed cushions on Lime Kiln Road and Carrington Court, 2 locations that did have staff do reviews, did not make a warrant. However, there is a legitimate concern and a petition done by the residents which exceed the 50% threshold. So this will be paid for from Ward 12 minor maintenance, and I'll leave it there.
Nice and concise. Okay, it's before committee for vote. Councillor McMeekin, you're in favor of traffic measures, right? Traffic safety measures? Yep. That carries. On to 10.4, park improvements at Sherwood Park, 24 Sherwood Park Road, Stony Creek, Ward 10. Councillor Beatty, and your seconder, please.
Seconder is Councillor Matt Francis. Therefore, be it resolved that the addition of perimeter fencing at Sherwood Park at 24 Sherwood Park Road to be funded from the Stony Creek Compensation Royalties Reserve 117036 at an upset level, including contingency not to exceed $80,000, with the standard authorization given to the General Manager of Public Works. What this is, twofold. It's the replacement of some existing fencing that is starting to get up there in age into the 40 or 50 year mark and is not in any good state of repair. Secondarily to this, adjacent to the grade A soccer field, which is a permitted field, it's not for public access. There is a woodlot where it's started to become a bit of a tradition that members of the community are bringing their bicycles, ATVs, and motorized scooters, etc., over and causing damage to the permitted soccer fields at Sherwood Park, the grade A, top of the line, well cared for, well manicured area. In order to do this, while replacing the fencing that is in a poor state of repair, we are additionally going to be including some new fencing that would prohibit ATVs from getting onto these prime soccer fields. Seconder, as I mentioned, Councillor Francis.
It's before committee for electronic vote. And that carries. And then we have a notice of motion that remains as a notice of motion regarding planting 31 trees at Glendale Golf Course, 401 Mount Albion Road in Ward 5. And so that will come back to the next Public Works Committee. There is no further items on the agenda, so we can officially declare this meeting adjourned at 4:31. Thank you.